Hello? Okay.
Testing.
Testing.
Should be able to see me.
The time now is 7:30 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment for November 4, 2021. I'm James Sullivan. As chairman of the board, I'd ask you now to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
for all. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, and the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, finally by filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk, and also posting an announcement on the township website. Natalie C. is, I believe, here. I think I see her. Could I?
Yes, I am.
Okay, there you are, Natalie. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Dewhurst,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Kilduff,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Stoner, Ms. Chevalier, Mr. Sikowski,
Here.
Ms. Andrews, Ms. Andrews,
I know she's here because I see her name on the screen. Roseanne, can you put your video on?
You can continue with the roll call
Chairman Sullivan.
here. We'll see if we can get that technical problem. Oh, there's Roseanne right now.
Okay, Roseanne.
This meeting is being conducted electronically via the internet by a webinar. It's unique and it takes patience on all involved as we no longer gather together in the courtroom, but we're doing so from our own homes or our own offices. This meeting is also being televised by OBTV Channel 15 as well as YouTube Live. I remind those watching on any device that there may be up to a 30-second delay in communication. This will be important to remember if you wish to personally join the public portion. Anyone calling in must lower that device, otherwise you'll be confused by the time delay. I'd ask all participants at this particular moment to silence their cell phones to avoid any disturbances. Our meeting will follow the same protocols as always. There's some general housekeeping matters to start this evening, and which will be followed by two applications. I believe in between the two, the first and the second application, there'll be a 5-minute recess for the benefit of the stenographer, the professionals, and of course the board members. As in all applications, there is a public portion that follows the testimony. If you have particular interest in either of the applications and you wish to ask questions via phone, I suggest that you take notes now during the presentation so you can refresh your memory when you call. This would be a perfect time to access some pen and paper. Ms. Sawan is the township planner. As such, she moderates the meeting. I believe she's here. I see her. And she usually has some last minute items to tell the board and those watching at home. Ms. Sawan.
Actually, Chairman Sullivan, tonight Natalie will be making those announcements.
Okay.
She is conducting the meeting tonight.
All right. Natalie, would you be so kind?
Sure. Just a few reminders. The zoning board members will be unmuted during the first half of the meeting when they will be required to vote on other agenda items. The zoning board attorney, the zoning board chairman, the zoning board secretary, and the court reporter will remain unmuted throughout the meeting. Everyone else will be muted. Once the presentation for the application begins, the applicant's professionals will be asked to turn on their video and unmute themselves in the order in which they will testify. For the public, I will announce the last 4 digits of the caller's phone number to come forward and announce their name and address. I will also announce the last 4 digits of the next caller's phone number so that they will be prepared. We will share our screen to display any exhibits. The meeting information will be displayed on the screen multiple times during the meeting so that any resident who wishes to call and join the meeting can do so. Please be patient. You will have an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. To Ms. Sawant, her son, Vihan, and anyone else watching who may be celebrating the holiday of Diwali, may I say, many millions of lamps illuminate, may millions of lamps illuminate your life with endless joy, prosperity, health, and wealth forever. Wishing you and your family a very happy and safe Diwali.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Also, board members, Ms. Shapiro is not going to be present at the meeting tonight, although you probably see her name up there. In her place is Jonathan Blank. He's a professional engineer and certified municipal engineer, former assistant township engineer in Bernards Township, now working for Old Bridge Township. So, Mr. Blank, I don't see you, or do I?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yep, I'm present.
We welcome you, and we look forward to your professional guidance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on with the agenda. The only thing I'm going to move on the agenda is I'll hold the discussion on the board meeting schedule to the end of the meeting. And that's item number 3. We've had our roll call. As to minutes, you've received minutes from the October 21 meeting. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review them. Absent any comments or suggestions for additions or deletions, I would ask someone to move them for memorialization.
I'll move it.
Okay, it's Dewhurst and Kilduff.
I'll second it, Kilduff.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Stykowski,
I don't believe I could vote on this.
Ms. Andrews,
We're going to have to
Ms.
get,
Andrews.
Roseanne, you're going to have to unmute yourself. There you go. Perfect. Now you can,
Chairman Sullivan.
yes. All right. It brings us to item 4, and that's applications. We have 2 this evening, as I mentioned. I'll call them in order as they are written on the agenda. 24 dash, yes.
Chairman Sullivan, I'm sorry to interject. I think we missed roll call on the professionals, just so that we have it on record. Natalie, can you please take the roll call for all the professionals that are present?
Sure. Mr. Sachs,
Here,
Ms. Sawant,
Yeah.
Mr. Blank.
Here.
I am here, Ms. C. Mr. Gill, Mr. Lavallo, Mr. Miller,
I'm here.
Mr. Hart,
Here.
That covers it, I believe. All right, 2420 21Z. Steve Martin, this is in the OG2 zone. This is block 9000, lot 25, located at 2298 Route 9 South. This is a proposed used car dealership and auto repair, seeking major preliminary and final site plan and D variance. Michael Vidiello, representing the applicant, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I was just going to explain, well, first for the record, I'm a licensed attorney in the state of New Jersey, and I am representing the applicant, Steve Martin, tonight. As you just explained, we're here for preliminary and final major site plan, along with use variance and bulk variance relief, to make use of an existing facility, enlarge the parking lot at that facility, and for the use of a used car dealership with on-site maintenance just to support the used car dealership operation. As part of the application, I have with me here our professionals, our civil engineer, our traffic expert, and as well as our planner. I also have with me here tonight, as you can see, Mr. Martin. So if it pleases the board, we can have my professionals sworn. Mr. Carr would be the first to address the board, or if you'd like to proceed otherwise, please let me
Normally,
know.
Mr. Sachs will swear them in as they testify.
Thank
okay.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carr, if you please raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. There you are. Okay. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Jeffrey Carr, Carr, a principal with the firm of Lindstrom, Diesner, and Carr. I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed professional planner, and a certified municipal engineer and certified floodplain manager in the state of New Jersey. I have both a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science from New Jersey Institute of Technology. And I practiced these professions, both of these professions, for over 40 years. I have appeared before Old Bridge Township on a number of occasions, as well as many municipalities throughout the state of New Jersey on similar types of applications, as well as residential, commercial, and industrial applications throughout the state of New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. We're familiar with you. It was nice of you to put that on for those watching at home who better understand how the procedure goes and what professionals are testifying and as to what. So once again, thank you. We accept your expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carr, can you confirm that you or others under your direction and control have prepared the site plan documents submitted today as part of the application?
Yes, that is correct.
And you're prepared as necessary to display the exhibit, share your screen, and as such?
Yes.
Okay. So using that as you think necessary, when we do that, I'd like to pause to make sure that what you're displaying is either submitted as part of the application already and we can reference it, or if it's an exhibit, we'd like to ask the board exactly how they'd like to mark it. So, but without further delay, can you please start by describing for the board, orient the board generally as to where this site is and what's currently on the site, please?
Yes, the site is a small 0.9 acre, roughly triangular site. It's located on Route 9 on the southbound side, adjacent to and the Sarah Woods Bible Church. It's basically, if you're heading south, it's right at the entrance to basically a slip ramp that has access onto Fairway Lane. That's the general location of the site.
And the improvements that are currently on the site.
Currently, there's an existing building located very close to the Route 9 right-of-way. It was formerly a house. It's two-story, relatively small structure. I believe the footprint is about less than 1,500 square feet, two-story. There's a detached garage behind that. There's an access from Route 9, as I had indicated, and then there's a paved parking area or paved area as you first enter the site. Just a single two-way access. And then beyond that, there is a small gravel area that was put there for basically a turnaround area for the last user, which was a limousine service. The rest of the site is past the gravel area is open. It's an open, basically, I'll say a field area. It's not a maintained lawn area, but it's a cleared area. And then the very end of the site is wooded. To the north or to the right as you enter the site is the church property. And to the left or to the south of us is a vacant wooded parcel.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for describing the site. And did you confirm the zone? I'm sorry, did you
the zone it's located in the OG office zone.
Right. And you mentioned that although the structure that's on the property was originally a house, residential uses aren't permitted here, correct?
That's correct. There was a non-conforming pre-existing use. It was converted a number of years ago. I don't know exactly when it was. Then there were some slight improvements, some parking areas or paved areas were put in. And then it went through another change of use a number of years ago before the board, and I did represent the property owner, which is still the current property owner, on that application, and that was to make some additional minor improvements for the limousine service. But currently, the site is vacant, and my understanding is it's been vacant for quite some time.
And the limousine service you mentioned was the last user, and that was via a D variance, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So can you describe now what's proposed to change on the site? I guess with the improvements, what's going to change, and then we can talk about how the use is proposed.
The changes are relatively straightforward and also relatively simple. And as one might expect, since it's only a 0.9 acre site and it's developed already, and I can share my screen and refer to that unless everybody else has a plan in front of them. What's the preference?
Let's
Mr.
share the
Carr,
screen.
Mr. Carr,
Yes.
we will share the screen unless something has changed from what you had
No,
submitted
it's
in the back.
I would just have the plan. Or are you going to put that up or share the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will put
Great.
it up on the screen.
Okay. If you can just
Natalie?
put that site plan up then. All right, this is just the cover page of the screen. It basically outlines it, and this is the site plan which describes or shows what we're basically doing. You can see the, if you can, yep, perfect. That's perfect. To the left is State Highway Route 9. Unfortunately, you'll have to picture yourself looking down or looking south. Southbound would be on your left-hand side, and you can see the north arrow pointing down towards the floor. As you enter the site, the existing building is there, and you can see that in a dark footprint with a couple of bump outs in the rear. A two-way access aisle you can see, and that is all paved in the front. Then if you go a little bit about midway into the site, just before the shaded area, that's where an existing two-car garage is located. And then there is a gravel area off to the right that's existing. Our proposal is pretty straightforward in that we are planning on expanding the gravel area. And you can see that's in the dark shaded kind of dotted area. And that's just going to be a gravel area. And that's going to be used for the storage of used cars for sale. So that customers would come in and they would use the paved parking area on the, as soon as you come in, you can make a right. There's handicap accessibility space on the left-hand side along the face of the building. Adjacent to the parking aisle is a handicap ramp to get you into a door in the front of the building. So there is handicap accessibility. And again, any users of the site or employees would be on the paved areas, and the storage of the vehicles would be in the stone area. The garage is simply going to be used for, I'll say, general maintenance, general prep of a vehicle. If it comes in, if it needs a new windshield wiper, if some leather needs to be repaired or fixed in air, or mirror needs to be replaced, basically simple things like that. It's not, and the garage just made that convenient to do that in that area, so that we would utilize the garage area. And that would probably be done on a temporary basis. We wouldn't anticipate full-time employee for the prep, since it's not really many cars on here. But a car may come in that needs some minor adjustments there. There'd be no working on the cars as far as brake replacements, engine replacements, or transmission work or something of that nature. Anything like that would be done off-site in a mechanic shop. These would not be mechanics on the site. These are basically just prep workers that would attend to those minor things. So while our application said it was for auto repair or auto maintenance, I want to be clear that it's not being, for repairs to cars that you would see at a service station. Likewise, there would be no repairs or no maintenance or no preps for cars that are not for sale. You couldn't call up and say, hey, do you do detailing? And then somebody would do detailing in the garage here or on the site here. This is only for the maintenance and prep for used car vehicles. And as anyone could well expect, when you're showing a car, you want to show it as best you can. So you want to make sure those minor things are taken care of. There wouldn't be any auto body work or anything of that nature. The way the site is generally going to operate is it's predominantly going to be internet sales, as most people probably can sense today. The way car sales goes, whether it's new cars or used cars, predominantly a significant amount of it is done online. You look at cars, you see what's available on the lot, you kind of pick out what's available. Generally there's, numbers of pictures in here, 20, 30, 40 pictures oftentimes for various vehicles showing the interior, the exterior, the trunk, the tires, the mirrors. It basically shows everything you almost want to see. And the whole concept nowadays is that you do all your research in advance. You basically pre-select your car, and you can even work out financing online, what have you, so that you minimize any time or effort on there. And I'm sure people have seen commercials where they actually deliver the car to your door if you so choose. I'm not one of those people. I would want to, once I've selected it, you'd want to go and actually finally see it to make sure that what's represented in the picture. So for the most part, we would anticipate the site traffic to be extremely minimal. Even at that, however it worked, whether before internet sales were around, it's still a small site. Approximately 40 cars at the most would be stored on a site. So even at that, it's very limited in choices there. So you're not going to have general public coming in and out of the site. In a way, dealerships or used car dealerships work, they don't function at the same time as peak hour traffic. Peak hour traffic is generally 6 in the morning to 8 in the morning, and at 4 in the afternoon to 6 at night. This would most likely be open somewhere about 9 o'clock, and then it would have evening hours as well. So people generally wouldn't be, stopping here on the way to work. It's not a traffic interrupter in the sense that it absorbs peak hour traffic. So even the timing of the traffic is somewhat different. And again, as you would expect, there's not many people using the site to look at a total of 40 different vehicles. As far as the number of employees, we would anticipate probably 2 employees, maybe a third employee doing car prep on particular days or on an as needed basis. But again, a full-time prep person wouldn't be there to handle the limited amount of cars here, but you might have 1 salesperson and maybe an office person in here. So we would anticipate probably a maximum of 2, 3 at the worst case during any given time in here. As far as other improvements, we are doing some landscaping in front. we are very limited in what we can do here, in that the front area of the site is already developed. There's a sidewalk access in front of the building closest to Route 9. So you can see on the plan here, we are enhancing some landscaping in front of the building. And there's a small open space area at the lower left corner that we are enhancing that area with some additional landscaping. And we are also requesting a variance for a sign. While the sign would normally be required to be 10 feet from the site or from the property line, we are providing 1 foot. And there's two reasons for that. One is, as you can see, the road, Route 9 or the ramp curves off to the right away from Route 9. So this gives it the best visibility in this corner. And also pushing it back 10 feet would place it within paved areas. So we are requesting a small ground sign there, and that's to help designate what the site is. And that would enhance traffic safety in that area there. Additional striping would be placed as necessary. Any old striping would be replaced. But essentially that's how the site operates. There's existing lighting on the building and in the paved areas, and then we would provide additional lighting in the storage area. The rest of the site would remain as in its wooded area to the right. I do not believe any trees are required to be removed, so those would remain, and all other features would remain as well. And that essentially is the way the site operates.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Just to confirm, the proposal for hours of operation, I understand the proposed hours would be 10 a.m. to approximately 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday, no Sunday hours. I also understand, is it correct that in the garage there would be no type of vehicle lifts, like you see at a bigger garage, there's no vehicle lifts, is that correct?
Correct. No vehicle lifts. There's no bathroom. There's no water in the garage. Basically, it just happens to be on the site, and it just makes sense to use it as need be for any minor car prep that might need to be.
The prep with detailing, waxing the car out of the rain, things like that.
Yeah, something to that extent. Like I say, general maintenance on there. No car repairs, no body shop work, that type of stuff would not be done on site.
And you mentioned the photos, the cars that would be located on this site. These used cars would be documented and photographed and published on the internet, on the appropriate websites, just like other internet car sales, correct?
That is correct.
So the user that comes to the site is really just, they've seen the photos. I just want to kick the tires. I want to hear the engine start, and not necessarily looking, they can't access the cars without an appointment, correct? The cars are obviously locked.
Correct. It's not an open lot. While there be a salesperson in there, while it's possible that somebody's driving down the road or somebody knows that they stop there to look at some cars, that's certainly possible, as you could on any new or used car facility. But predominantly, and especially with COVID, I have done several car dealerships over the years, and currently working on a few as we speak. And the sales, actually, the majority of the sales and business is done online now, and even a lot of the financing is done online. The day of coming in at 10 or in the morning or 12 at noon and leaving at 6 o'clock at night because you just spent 4 or 5, 6 hours buying a car and going through financing, those days are gone. Most of that stuff is done quickly, and a lot of it is done online.
Thank you. The cars, how are they delivered to the site? How would a used car be brought to the site by the operator?
This site would not utilize car carriers. Again, it's a small business. It's used cars. Cars would be brought in individually. Either they would be driven in by drivers, or they would be brought in on a flatbed, type of tow truck.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you wouldn't be pulling the car on air for obvious reasons, but these would be hand-picked vehicles, and they'd be delivered to the site. As one or two sold, they might replace one or two. So this is not like it's a large lot where they get a delivery of a car carrier filled with vehicles. That's not how this site would operate, obviously, just based on its size.
Right. And besides car deliveries, what about other delivery like trucks visiting the site? What's the expectation for delivery vehicles or trucks?
Minimal. Again, most stuff is done on computers or over the internet, but that's not to say that an office supply truck or FedEx delivery would be dropped off here. But for the most part, there wouldn't be any large trucks. There wouldn't be tractor trailers. There wouldn't be car carriers. And you'd have, your mail truck would come in, a garbage truck would come in. And even at that garbage truck, you'd probably have once a week. It's not obviously not a large building. 2 employees, you'll probably get a pizza box now and then, or some lunch leftover stuff. But for the most part, it's not a generator of trash either.
And no dumpsters proposed. So
no dumpsters. It would be cans. It's always all the uses that I'm aware of in the past have all had trash cans. It's stored in the back of the building. You can see the trash area up in the upper right rear of the building, in a fenced enclosed area, and that's how this would work as well.
And you mentioned trucks. So the flatbed truck, the UPS, the FedEx trucks, would they be able to turn around and get in and out of the site and turn around and get out of the site?
Yes, and in reviewing the review letter, we would agree to make some adjustments in here to make a T turnaround, most likely on one side or other of the garage, so that if a truck came in, they could come in and make a K turn in one perfect K turn. So we would do that on either side of the garage, and we would adjust the stone or the pavement to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you. And what about water and sewer service for the property? Can you talk
the
briefly about that?
site's served by septic system. That's on along the church property line. And again, it's been functioning. I'm not aware of, and I've been to the site a number of times. I'm not aware of any problems with the septic system. The owner has said that he has not had any problems with the septic system. So it has been functioning. And again, it's basically handles 2 employees. So it's less flow than you would expect from a single family house. There wouldn't be showering and that type of stuff. So cooking wouldn't be there. So it's minimal amount of use there. And I believe it's on public water, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Okay, on public water. Okay. So you described how it's going to be used and what improvements will be added and not added. And just for clarification, so it looks like the shading, the dark shading on this plan, there's actually 2 shades, correct? One has bigger dots. The shaded area with the bigger dots, that would be the expansion of the gravel area?
Correct. As you come off the pavement, you can see an area that's solid shading.
Right.
I don't know if does my mouse show up on?
Yeah. Well, is that you? It looks like.
Oh, that's somebody else's mouse.
Okay, somebody else.
But as you come in, you can see the correct right in.
I guess there's 3 shades. There's really 3 shades. The one on the far left, I guess, is asphalt.
That's asphalt, right?
The tiny dots are asphalt. The
Right,
big
and then-
dots are new gravel and the shade in the middle is existing gravel?
That's correct. That's correct. The majority of the dark shaded area is new stone, but you can see the first few parking spaces, and it kind of almost looks like a fishtail, if you can see that. And that was kind of an area that the larger limousines and limousine buses would turn around in. So that was provided. So we're just expanding that gravel area.
Mhm. We wouldn't have any, would there be proposed any buses on the site now or any of those larger vehicles on the site now?
No, there would not be. No.
At this point, I'd like you to, pursuant to your plans and what you've prepared, can you identify for us the variances and or design waivers that are requested?
Yes, and probably the easier thing is to refer to the staff's letter dated today's date from Ms. Swan and Ms. Shapiro.
Okay.
And page 4 lists the zoning requirements and basically the variances that are required. The majority of the variances or nonconformities are existing and ride with the property. For instance, 2 acres required where we have 0.9. The existing setback, 50 foot is required where we have 10.2. Side yard setback, we meet that. But these are basically the nonconformities, and they're listed in there. One that is listed in there that is a variance, and that's item or line number 3, maximum floor area ratio. 0.25 is required, and it's listed as existing as 0.33. That is an error, and I think you could see that pretty clear. We are not, this building here, even though you count the second story as part of floor ratio, if you double the size of this building footprint that you see, clearly we are not 25% of the site. That is a decimal place error. Instead of 0.33, it should be 0.03. And you can see that's obvious from inspection that the building footprint is extremely small compared to, even though the site is undersized compared to the site. So we do not need a variance for that.
Okay, so you're on your plan, that decimal place should have been moved to the other side of the 0. So 0.0.
Well, another 0 should be added in front of the 3. So it should be 0.03. So it's 0.03, not 0.3.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. That I see.
So we don't need that.
Okay.
The variance that we basically need, and I'll go through parking and loading here. We would normally need a variance for loading, but as I indicated, we could adjust the stone area or the pavement area on either side of the garage so that we could provide a K-turn, an adequate K-turn area for any types of vehicles, a FedEx truck or a flatbed tow truck. So we would eliminate that variance there. Parking spaces is listed, parking spaces for automotive repair garage, 4 per bay. And it's indicating that there are none. And we would argue that that's not a variance. That requirement for a bay would be when you're doing car repairs. A person comes in, they want to get their car fixed. You need 4 parking spaces for the bay, and that makes sense because you're changing cars in and out. The mechanic works on somebody's car for an hour, then he moves it for the next car. So before the person picks up, so that's the logic behind the 4 per bay. We don't have this. This is specifically only to be used for the cars that are occupying the storage spaces, they would be pulled out of storage space, or before they get into a storage space, they might go through some prep. So we do not believe that that is a variance required. We do meet all of the other requirements for parking. In fact, we exceed all of the other requirements for parking. So clearly, we don't need that variance there. We need the use variance, and I'll defer a little while before I go into the use variance. But flipping to page 5 are the bulk variances, and again, some I covered already, but the maximum floor area ratio, we don't need that. That was just an error in a decimal place. The landscape, the minimum landscape area ratio, we do meet the 40%, and I think by inspection, you could see that the area on the bottom of the page with a septic system and below the gravel parking area adjacent to the church, you could see that's a large open space area. At the far right of the plan, the triangular point, there's an existing wooded area. You can see that that's pretty substantial. And of course, everything on the south side of the site or the top side of the site behind the existing structure, that's all, and behind the garage, that's all open space as well. So even by inspection, you could see that we meet the 40% there. Again, the parking spaces for automotive, I don't believe we need those, but either case, we have more parking spaces than we would need for a car sales.
Mm-hmm.
The freestanding sign, and I talked about that earlier in my testimony, that's along Route 9. We would need a variance for that. I think that's the appropriate place to be. It's the closest to Route 9 before the ramp starts, and it stays out of the paved area. And again, it's a lower ground sign with landscaping behind it, as well as landscape bed at the base of it. So I think that's an appropriate variance for that. And we need the last two lines are buffer requirements. And again, this is a pre-existing. We would normally need 75 feet of buffer area between the right-of-way and building area. And since the building is existing and the parking is existing, we don't meet that buffer requirement. It is not something we are exacerbating with this application. This is a pre-existing condition that rides with the property.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those essentially are the variances. So I think the use variance, the sign variance, which we're creating, and then the few existing nonconformities that are variance situations that ride with the land regardless of this application.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that discussion. What about loading? There was a note about loading space. Do we require the loading space variance?
Yes,
or-
and that's what I had indicated.
Sorry.
While we didn't provide a loading, there's an area to the left of the garage.
Oh, okay.
We
I
can
see.
make some adjustments there,
I'm
or
sorry.
we can adjust the gravel area on the right side of the garage. But it clearly we can adjust this by doing some minor tweaking and provide an adequate K-turn area there.
Okay, thank you. So members of the board, I believe, Mr. Carr, does that conclude the bulk of your direct testimony from an engineering point of view?
Unless you want to go over the waivers, the next page is the waivers.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, let's talk about the waivers. They're listed right there. I guess we're starting on page 6 for the board of the board planner report.
Yes. And these, and I'll try to simplify it. The page 6 are waivers that all have to do with landscaping. And whether it's some hard landscaping, some shrubberies or some trees there. And rather than take one by one individually, I think I can simplify it. Many of the landscape comments in here have to do with that 75-foot buffer area and what's required in that 75-foot buffer area. And that would be street trees at 40 feet on center, a hard or a durable landscaping, the landscape buffer itself that has to be placed in there. And for obvious reasons, we can't provide that type of landscaping and that type of buffering. So all of those items that refer to that we would ask for those design waivers. And they're existing situations. And again, we're not exacerbating it, but we are trying to at least address it to the extent that we can. As I indicated, in the front left corner, as you approach the site from Route 9, we've added some landscaping, and you can see there's a substantial amount of landscaping in that area. That kind of provides some screening to the paved area and gives some aesthetic appearance along the street frontage. The building, there's very limited green area in front of the building, but we have put together what I think is a comprehensive planting bed that includes some ornamental trees, some shrubs, and some annual flower beds to provide, again, four-season coloring, as well as some substantial break of the view of the front of the building or the sidewalk along Route 9. As you continue along the property, through the ramp area, that's all open space area. There's some woods area there, so there are some trees in that area, and that will remain. So we think we meet at least the spirit of the landscape ordinance as best we can, given the constraints of the site. Some of the other requirements in here, the landscaping, have to do with the parking areas. You have to have 5 feet of landscaping on either side of your parking or along property lines. On the south side or the top, as you're looking at the plan now, we actually have a 10-foot or 9-foot separation from the parking. We could get as close as 5 feet there. So it's a little bit better there. And again, that site is completely wooded. So adding some landscaping in there would provide no benefits to anyone. And on the church side, again, we're adjacent to the church, but we have at the closest point we're 5 feet, and then it increases substantially away from there. Probably, if I was to estimate, we probably approach something in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 feet, and that would be open space lawn area there. So again, I think we meet the spirit of that. And then if you look along the existing parking or paved area, there is a hedgerow that's existing. I'm not sure, from what I recall, that's been there. It's partly on our property, partly on a church property, but it's an established screen there. So again, I believe that we meet the spirit of that as far as ordinance goes. A couple of other minor things in the landscape requirements are what I believe intended for larger parking spaces. Trees within parking lots, islands within parking lots. Typically, if you have a shopping center, a large food store, department store, something of that nature, a Walmart or something, certainly the intent would be to break up the parking areas by putting landscape islands within that. We don't have that condition here. We have 2 rows of parking abutting open space area. So we really don't have the opportunity to put landscape islands in here that would do any appreciable benefit to the aesthetics or to break up the stone areas there. So we think this is really intended for larger parking spaces to break up those areas and not really appropriate for here. So again, I think given the description I said of how this is laid out and what's around us, I think we meet the spirit of that. Though I guess if you read it technically, we would need waivers on all of these items.
Understood. Okay. And just jumping around for one moment, can you talk briefly about your plans show the above ground propane tank to the south of the house, former house structure?
There's no sale of propane. That is an existing above ground propane tank. It's a larger tank. It's used for heating purposes only. There's no sale of propane.
And it heats the two-story structure, correct?
That's my understanding. Correct. It's just used for heating, not for sale.
Okay, thank you.
I can continue on page 7. It kind of overlaps with a couple of waivers.
Yes,
other
please.
than landscaping. Lighting height, 18 feet is required. The existing light pole is 20 feet. We are putting an additional light post up there. We're simply matching the 20 feet. It's de minimis. And again, there's wooded areas to the south of us and the church to the left of us. So I think matching the height of the existing light would be more appropriate than meeting the variance.
And there's one existing light, and we're adding a second. Is that correct?
Correct. There's building mounted light, a wall pack. There's an existing light in the paved area. We are adding one additional light, and we may add one additional light post based on some engineering comments to improve the lighting in here. But it would be again just. It would just match the existing pole, and it's 20 feet instead of 18 feet. And I would think that's a de minimis exception.
But you'd be willing to add that other light pole, one more light pole per that comment?
Correct. We would work with staff on increasing the lighting intensities in all areas. And we wouldn't have any problem adding it, but I just want to advise the board that in working with staff, we may have 2 poles of 20 feet rather than the one that's shown on this plan. But again, I see that as a de minimis exception.
Understood.
Parking stall lengths, we're asking for 18 feet where 20 foot's required. All of our parking spaces in the paved areas, customer employee parking, they all meet the 20 foot. We were just asking for the 18 feet for the storage areas. And again, it was simply just to reduce the amount of disturbance. It's a stone area there, and they don't abut other parking spaces. So you always get the benefit of a 2-foot overhang if necessary. And these are storage, so they're basically there. They're not going to be used by customers. So we think, again, that's appropriate just to minimize some of the stone area in here.
If a car was sold and it was parked in the back, would the buyer pull it out of the rear lot?
No, a salesperson would pull it out, pull it into the aisle, and rather than have the customer pull it out of there. And it kind of leads me into the next waiver request. We're asking for the stone area. We thought just for stormwater management, that would be more appropriate since customers, for the most part, are not driving in and out of here. It's minimal amount of movements through here. We thought that was appropriate and more environmentally sensitive. But that does require an additional waiver where bituminous parking spaces or bituminous parking lots are required. We would defer it to the board. If the board so requires us to put pavement, we would not object to it, but we think just based on the type of use here, it makes more sense to use a gravel area there as opposed to pavement. And the same would go for the curbing. There's no curbing existing on the site. And we were just keeping in nature with that. And again, with this stone there, we thought it was appropriate for drainage and the environment that curbing not be provided in that area. And I've already talked about the parking islands. And that basically covers all of our waivers and variance requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. At this point, I believe other than responding to some specific comments or questions that are already in the board consulting reports, I believe that concludes the bulk of your direct engineering testimony, correct?
I think so. I would still need to discuss the use variance, but I believe that covers the majority of the comments, with the exception of one or two that I might have missed an error in the report. But as far as what I testified, I think that basically gets the bulk of it.
Yeah. And I would ask the board at this point, we can make sure we're covering any of the comments that were brought up in the report that we maybe haven't touched on yet, or were your board professionals going to go through their reports, however it pleases the board.
Mr. Chairman, just a matter of housekeeping. I think we need to just reference these exhibits that Mr. Carr testified to. I know they were submitted as part of the submission, but just so the record is clear, and I don't think we need to mark it as an A exhibit for this evening, but the cover sheet was dated December 21st, 2020. The as-built and topographic survey was dated November 18th, 2020. The site plan, December 21st, 2020, and the soil erosion plan, December 21st, 2020.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Carr, that's correct on those dates, correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Vitiello, normally what the board would do is I would go to the professionals next. Then I would go to the board members along with Mr. Sachs, should they have any questions or comments. And then at the end, after your final testimony or your final witness, I'll go to a public portion.
Yeah, that would be great. Just pointing out, Mr. Carr is also our professional planner, so he has yet to do his planning testimony, which we'll talk about when you're ready.
Okay, so I guess that's when we're going to hear about the D1 use variance, right?
That's correct.
Okay. In that case, I'll go to our engineer, Mr. Blank.
Mr. Carr, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I might have missed it when we were talking about parking, but for the accessible parking spaces where 2 are required, are you still going to request a waiver for that?
Well, I did skip over that. It would be my testimony that, and what we're talking about is the handicap accessible parking space. The regulations state that when you have parking lots of 1 to 25 parking spaces, that you need 1 handicap accessible space. Then it goes from 26 to I believe 50 for the second one. It would be my testimony that we are only required 1 because that is what the parking area is. The remaining, this has been my experience on all automobile dealerships, is that the storage lot of vehicles does not require the increase in handicap accessible parking spaces. So we wouldn't need the second parking space. And even on a practical matter, I wouldn't expect that you would need that as well. We have more than enough parking spaces in here for the above what's required for car sales and for the employees. So we're in excess there. So even a few parking spaces that we have there. So I don't believe we need the second one. So I don't believe a waiver is required.
Okay. I want to talk about drainage. So as a result of the new stormwater management rules, you now have to kind of look at the site through the history dating back to 2004 to kind of quantify how much impervious area has been added to the site over time. I know just looking at past applications and looking at past historic aerials of the property, that there have been additional impervious areas such as pavement added through various applications, as well as before the conversion from a residential to an office use. Now, our office believes that you are now over a quarter acre of combined impervious area, as well as with this application, motor vehicle surface, which would trigger the stormwater management regulations. So I wanted to hear your proposal for stormwater management for the property.
Well, the simple answer is that we had provided the stone area there, and certainly that provides recharge in there. Notwithstanding your comments and the new regulations that recently took effect, we would have no problem working with your office and providing additional stormwater measures as may be needed. I think one of the things that is appropriate here is the stone recharge or the stone parking area that would count as green infrastructure, which is what the NJDP is looking for stormwater management. So I think whether it's planned or by accident, the stone area at least helps in that matter in addressing the stormwater. But I think again that goes to the weight of supporting our request for a waiver on the paid parking area. Notwithstanding, I would indicate to the board and to you as well that we would work with your office on providing additional stormwater measures as may be required to address the current stormwater regulations. I don't see that as on this site as being anything that would be difficult to do.
So you were saying that the gravel that you're proposing will assist with stormwater management by recharge and storing
Yes.
water. But
Yes.
as I'm sure you know, with the new rules, there's now specific green infrastructure BMPs that you need to provide, such as it could be a bioretention basin, it could be sand bottom infiltration basin. There are also green infrastructure manufactured treatment devices that can handle water quality requirements.
Correct. And we would work with your office to modify this to accommodate those items
Well, and
as
as you,
best we can. Yeah.
and I'm sure you know, also you'll need to do soil logs and soil testing to kind of verify where your water
Yes.
table elevation is. But at this
Correct.
point in time, we do not know that. We don't have that information.
Yeah, correct. You're correct. But again, my representation would be, and I would expect that the water table is fairly deep, maybe not excessively, but there's an existing septic system on there. So I would anticipate that, when that was constructed, it certainly met the requirements. But we would work with your office to address those types of issues here.
Yes, I would like to see a stormwater management design if
Sure.
this layout is still pursued.
Sure.
I do have some concerns about circulation, but I'm going to defer to our traffic engineer regarding those comments. And you'll provide a truck turning template on your site plan to kind of verify all turning movements.
Yes, I can do that. And as I indicated, we will modify this to do a turnaround on one side of the garage or the other. And I think that can easily accommodate that. Obviously, tractor trailers will not turn around on the site, nor will they be allowed on here. But the types of vehicles that we expect on here, FedEx truck, the flatbed trailer, certainly will provide the turning template to show that the K-turn area will work as designed.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blank. Mr. One.
Good evening, board members. Mr. Carr, I actually don't have many questions. I would reserve most of my questions for the planning testimony, but I do want to point out one thing. The variance table, parking spaces for auto repair garage, you're absolutely right there. That was a typo. It should have been to be decided, because my planning comment says that if that were to be a secondary principal use on the property, then you would have to provide parking for that use. So I agree with you. You don't need a variance on that. In terms of the signage, we would like to see some details of the signage so that we can review it for compliance with the township code. So I would recommend that should the board act favorably on this application, that be a condition of approval that you provide us with the signage details.
That would be no problem.
Yep, we would agree to that.
And I mean, since we're talking about engineering, and I know we have a traffic expert who has reviewed the application thoroughly, I just have a doubt because obviously from this review letter, you have realized there was extensive research done on the site and the prior approvals. I was reviewing a former planner's one of the letters issued by him, and there was mention of getting approval from NJDOT or a review being done by NJDOT, because the access to the site is from the slip ramp or the exit ramp to Fairway Lane. So was that ever pursued? Because I went through our records, I couldn't see anything, but I did find a review letter from Mr. Rizzo, the former planner, asking the applicant to do that when you came in front of the board for the limousine service. So
I don't recall. I honestly don't recall. But my experience is that, and it's twofold, and this goes into the traffic engineers review letter as well. Every property is guaranteed an access to a roadway. That's basically law that you can have. This has no other alternatives than to be basically in the place it is. It can't shift northerly. So this is the only place that it can be. And it's an existing condition. The DOT would not, an application to the DOT would not kick in unless a site or a change of use in the site changes it to a major traffic generator, which clearly we're not. The site being 0.9 acres is clearly not a significant traffic generator. So it would not kick in for that reason. And the second thing that would kick in to the NJDOT is if you did any modifications to the driveway or work within the right of way, which we are doing neither. So there's nothing on this application that would require an NJDOT review or jurisdiction on that.
I mean,
and I'd even go so far as saying that that would have been the case on the limousine service as well. I don't know what letter you're referring to, but I mean that's just certain requirements that NJDO has as to when an application is required, and this wouldn't meet those requirements.
I understand that, and I didn't mean in terms of access, but because it is on the ramp, the access to the site is through the ramp. When the use changes, wouldn't you submit anything to NJDOT and have them review it? Because one, the intensity between the limousine service and this use. It's a debatable topic, which I know we will get into when we talk about the use, but I was just curious if there was anything submitted to NJDOT in the past.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
And while we could discuss whether or not it's more intense, the same intensity or less intense than the prior uses on the site, the criteria with the NJDOT is not whether a site is more intense than what its prior use was, but it has to be it has to change the amount of traffic. For instance, if you had and I'll just make up some numbers, if you had a 5-acre, bless you, if you had a 5-acre site that was only developed with I'll say an acre of it, and it was a small use, and then you decided to increase the development and build on the other 4 acres, then the amount of traffic could be significant. And I say could be significant that it kicks it into the next category that would require a major access review. And this clearly does not meet the requirements for a major access review. So even if there's more traffic than there was on a limousine service, it's not enough to require NJDOT permits.
That's all on my end, Chairman Sullivan. I will hold off all my comments for the planning testimony.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to the board, I just had a couple questions. And I just want to follow up on Ms. Savant's inquiry regarding the DOT. Mr. Carr, do you know if a DOT permit or an approval was ever issued for this means of ingress and egress to this site on a DOT slip ramp?
No, I don't.
Okay, because, I mean, obviously this site's been here a while, but I think it would be beneficial to perhaps see some archival records of whether or not this particular entrance or exit was ever approved by the DOT. I understand what you're saying about,
right.
Whether we move it into a major or a minor access permit, depending upon, the amount of traffic being generated. But I'd be curious to know, whether there was ever any permit issued or any approval ever issued by the DOT for this particular, for the particular
right.
existing access.
I understand. I couldn't tell you whether anything was ever permitted.
All right. I just had one question, engineering wise. How are you going to handle snow removal on this gravel parking area?
Very carefully.
Okay.
You can still remove snow from gravel areas. You basically just got to set your blade so you're not digging into gravel areas. You'll always have a little bit of snow on there, but it's basically a level area there, and so it's easy enough. And we have ample room on the outsides of it to push the snow off of there. So yeah, you won't have it down all the way to the stone, but like you would on a paved area. But again, this is a storage lot. And the other thing that'll happen is, since it's a storage lot, you'll probably get a couple of guys with some hand shovels to kind of clean up what the snow removal can't get. And again, it's a very small site to begin with.
All right. Thank you.
You are.
Ms. Swan, I can't see the screen to see who else is up. Do we have any other professionals that I'm missing?
Yes, we do have our traffic expert.
Yes.
Mr. Metzler from TPD, and he is with us. I'm going to have him turn on. Oh, he's right here.
I see him now.
Yes.
Mr. Metzler, do you have some questions for the engineer?
I have, I don't know if there's so much questions, maybe just some comments. Since we're not sharing screen, I'm going to not be rude, but I want to look at my site plan to keep my thoughts. Mr. Carr, you answered quite a few of the questions I had, so thank you for that. back to, it's like just like one comment while we're talking here, regarding the trip generation. I mean, Mr. Carr is correct. I mean, this site is not going to trip any NJDOT requirements, but it is going to generate more traffic. Whether it needs to go NJDOT or not, it's still going to generate more trips and a different kind of trips. I mean, you're going to have, even though mostly internet sales, you are going to have more of the public coming in and out. You're going to have deliveries. You're going to have vehicular turnover. It's just going to be more than several employees coming in and out every day who are used to the driveway, its particulars, where it is, it's and everything. With the access, I know that there's some competing needs in here, with landscaping and everything. I think we need to make sure that the sight lines and appropriate sight distance, looking looking back up Route 9 is there. So maybe some additional signage or channelization, striping on the driveway to force and enhance a right turn, a right in, right out, so that people don't feel emboldened to try to make some sort of cut through maneuver to get back over to southbound Route 9. Again, back to the competing needs of stormwater and some site circulation. Obviously Mr. Carr said that they would be making some accommodations for the delivery vehicles. We'll look forward to seeing that and the turning movement templates, but also the gravel versus pavement. I certainly understand from a stormwater management standpoint the desire to do gravel from a longevity standpoint, and also a clear delineation of parking spaces and circulation on the site. Having it as asphalt pavement would be preferable. Would be more durable. It would hold up. There wouldn't be any snow plowing issue, and you can't paint parking spaces on gravel. I mean, if you do, you're going to be having to refresh it on quite a regular, routine basis. So I mean, I would say those are my general comments. Certainly, I think I'm not sure if there's any. I'm glad to hear that we're talking about single unit trucks or delivery vehicles, and that there's no type of tractor trailer or trailer of any kind on the site, because there's nowhere to turn it around in any way other than backing it back out onto Route 9. I would say that summarizes my thoughts and comments here at the moment.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll respond to a couple of that, maybe simplify, maybe eliminate some other follow-up questions, but certainly we would work with Mr. Metler's office to address any signage or striping that will assist traffic safety. Certainly, we have no issue about that. We would work with him on that. Again, we think, because this is a storage lot and the salesman or the prep guy would be the one driving and storing those in there, we think the stone's appropriate. We understand that there's always some maintenance concern when you have stone areas, but that's the nature of the beast. There's pluses and minuses on all of that. Having said that, we don't object if the board sees fit that to approve this application and requires the pavement. Certainly, we're not objecting to that. We just think in this case here, when we talk these days about stormwater and how this is operating, that we think it's appropriate, and we hope the board leans to that side. But again, we'll leave that to the discretion of the board, and we'll certainly work with Mr. Methler and his office on some additional signing or striping that will aid traffic safety and traffic maneuvers. We have no problem with that. As to the amount of traffic, again, I think we're all in agreement that it's going to be a minimal amount of traffic. But I'd also remind the board that, in my expectations on here, and I think the way we all know used car lots work and when people come and people go, I think the expectation is that this would be less than, and the peak hours would be different than they would be if this was developed or used as an allowable use. If you had an allowable use as an office building, certainly you would expect more trips. And I think you would expect more trips during peak hours, both AM and PM, as offices would work. So I think this is certainly at least a viable alternative.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Thank you.
Mr. Carr, if I may just mention one thing as I was looking at the plan, I saw on the plan that was on the screen, the approximate location of the disposal field was shown, which I didn't have on the plan that I reviewed. And I just want to make sure you're aware of the setback requirements for any type of stormwater management basin from a disposal field.
Yes.
Which that kind of limits your area in terms of for stormwater management. So it's going to be very tight to make something work in
Well,
the little triangular piece that you have back there.
I agree. It's not a perfect thing. The topography goes away from the septic field, so that helps us. And again, and I don't like to beat a dead horse, but the stone recharge, or the stone surface helps storm water as opposed to a paved surface. So there is a benefit as that. And we got to keep in mind, this is a 0.9 acre site. We're not talking about a major shopping center. So while there may be some challenges in there, they're not insurmountable. And I'm sure that we as engineers can work out those challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Before I go to the board and ask if they have any questions of you, sir, would you explain to the board how one exits and when they come out of there? Should any car go in there, where does it have to go when they exit?
They'd have to head south. They
can't head south on Route 9. They have to turn onto Fairway Lane in order to access.
Yeah, they could take the slip ramp.
Okay.
And then at the slip ramp, then they could make full turning movements at the intersection.
Right. There's no actual, you couldn't come straight out and go on to Route 9 to go head south.
Correct. You'd have to take the slip ramp.
We're not legally anyway.
Correct. So you'd have to take the slip ramp, but at the end of the ramp, then you have options to go north or south.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Well,
I just want
actually,
to explain that to the board. I want the board to know that there is not access onto Route 9.
Correct. You would take the ramp right at the end of the ramp, which is at basically I don't know the distance, but it's only one property, that wooded property adjacent to us. Then you'd be at the intersection of Fairway Lane, and you can then have you have the opportunity to go left or right, or north or south. So it makes it even better.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Board members, questions of this particular witness? I see Mr. Scogno with his hand up. Go ahead. You're muted right now, Leon. There you go.
I got it. I couldn't agree with you more, President Sullivan. Coming off of that ramp, that's Fairway Lane. And if you would make a right there, you're going into the Glenwood Golf Club. Is that correct? So
I think you can get there, but not directly. I think at the end of Fairway Lane, I think you have to make a left.
No, you make a right. You take that all the way down, then it bears right. Anyway,
Okay.
So I would come into your establishment to purchase a vehicle, and, kicking tires and turning on the radio, that's in the past. I would like to go for a test ride. So you would take me, obviously, onto Route 9.
Right.
Right. Either north or south.
North or south, right.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yep.
And in my opinion, really, Route 9 is already overpopulated with the car dealerships, used car establishments, gas stations, car repair shops, and that jug handle is heavily used. So you're coming you're coming south on Route 9 at 40 miles an hour and you take that jug handle. Now, one of your vehicles, trucks, or whatever it is making that right into your entrance point. It's just too dangerous for me. Thank you very much.
Any other board members' questions of Mr. Carr? I see Mr. Connor's hand up. Go ahead, sir.
I will unmute. Also, to Leon's point and yours, Mr. Chairman, the exit point on that parking lot is both an in and out exit. There's a direct intersection to a heavily trafficked commuter bus lane. So the cars coming out of the lot will possibly intersect with a heavily traveled commuter bus lane in these peak periods. I haven't heard that.
I don't doubt that.
I haven't heard that addressed during the testimony.
Maybe I believe they have a traffic engineer, Jim. I think it's going to be testifying.
Okay.
Any other questions at the moment?
Well, can I ask Mr. Carr to briefly respond to that one last comment? We can certainly present our other professionals too, but I'd like to.
Yeah,
Jeff,
whatever you like, Mr. Viella.
You want me to just respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, briefly, let's talk
Well,
about.
as I've indicated, it's an existing site. Regardless of the board approving this application or it being used as an office building, the fact of the matter, there's going to be some traffic in there. And that's why I think this is an appropriate one. Office buildings have peak traffic hours that are the same as the street peak traffic hours, where the car dealership would not have that. As you heard, they don't open up until 10 o'clock. Then their hours are into the evening hours as well. So you don't get the same peak hours. So that's a benefit to that. As far as the bus lane does pass this site, and then the bus stop, I believe, is at the corner there by Fairway. But a person leaving the site wouldn't be crossing that. They'd be taking a slip ramp. So they wouldn't be interfering with the bus traffic. So it wouldn't be any different there. And then any other traffic movement in or out of the site would be the same, whether it's this use or whether it would be some other allowable use. The fact of the matter is the site's existing and it will be some use. And we think this is the better alternative, the way dealerships, number one, operate, more so with internet. And yes, people will come pick up the car or test drive it, but that becomes limited amount of traffic in and out of there. There won't be any queuing that's required. So I think it will be a safer situation than some of the allowable uses.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we were turning to other board questions. I didn't mean to interrupt. I see you have other questions coming in.
I don't know that we do. Anybody else?
I have a hand. Oh, there was a hand.
Mr. Slikowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess to piggyback off of some of the other concerns, I do understand what you're presenting, Mr. Carr. However, typically from my experience buying a car, I test drove several unfamiliar cars that I wasn't used to. I would imagine that if this property were to be made to a different use, let's just say an office space, the people going to this property every day would be familiar with the traffic and understand that they need to take the slip ramp. However, if I'm shopping for a car and I'm going and I'm taking Route 9 South and I'm going to, DCH and, working my way and I stop at this place and I want to test drive a few cars, although legally I'm not supposed to go on to Route 9 South directly, I may just do it anyway. And driving an unfamiliar car, multiple people or multiple cars being test drove, that's some of my concern. So I am concerned that this isn't really a great use of the space.
Thank you, Dan. Anything else? Anybody else? I'll just revisit a couple of things, Mr. Carr, that you said.
I think you have a hand up.
Oh, who else? Who else? Who did I miss?
Miss Kilduff?
Miss Kilduff?
Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm confused, but the last application we approved for this place, wasn't it a limousine company?
It was.
Yes.
It was.
Mhm.
So limousines are pretty long, aren't they? I mean,
Some are, yes.
when you're pulling out into that spot, that limousine pulling out is a little different from the car pulling out. I mean, so you kind of have to take that into consideration, no?
This limousine user also had 40-person buses and 29-person buses testified to and on site, and had 20% of their customers come to the site to inspect and look at the limousine before they rent it. They also had what you'd call strangers, members of the public coming. Your site also permits medical uses, LabCorp, doctors. You have strangers coming every day.
Well,
That's
I was
permitted
just
in
I was just confused. Everyone's very concerned about this pulling out, and I understand that. But I thought maybe the limousines would be a little more difficult to maneuver. Just throwing something out there. So
Anybody else? When, Mr. Carr, I noted that you said there'd probably be about 40, no more than 40 cars. I'm not quite sure whether you said no more or about 40 cars. stored on the site.
uh, 40 cars total, but the storage area has storage for 29 vehicles.
Right. And where would you put the other 11?
I'm sorry, I meant 40 cars total would be on the, trying to look at the, yeah, there would be 11 spaces that are in paved areas, including the handicap parking spaces. That'd be for employees. And then there will be 29 additional spaces in the storage area for the used cars.
Okay, so you
So
were
40
referring-
total, 40 total
40
spaces,
40
correct?
total spaces, but only 29 of them
29
would
for
be for saleable
the
and
storage, correct?
Okay, so the front is not going to have any, the angled parking that's presently there.
Correct. That
There's
would
not
be
going
for the employees and for the public.
To access to, for a place to park.
Correct.
So
Correct.
there will not be cars parked there for sale.
Correct. Unless, for instance, if somebody calls up and says, look, I was on the internet, I'm looking at this car, I'd like to come over, I'd like to make an appointment, then a salesperson may pull it out of the storage area and bring it up to one of the front parking spaces.
No, I understand that.
So he doesn't have to get it out later for there. But for the most part, all of the storage would be in a storage lot.
Right. That's what
Yes.
I'm saying. So we could limit the amount of cars for sale to 29, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you're not going to, unless there's a, well, although they're not delineated in the stone area, you have them on the plan delineated, although.
Yes.
Right. They're delineated just so we can show how
Right.
they are. But the salesman's going to be the one, or the prep guy is going to be the one who's parking them in there. So not the public.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're looking at a plan, a conceptual, that you would back them in so they look proper, just like a regular car lot. So everyone, you could walk by the fronts.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't have any more need for any other than 29 because you're not going to stack them in the middle of the lane.
That's
Correct.
right. That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So we could go hard fast on that number, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. I have one other thing. Hold on. I think that's it for now. I think I'm good from my notes. You want to go on to your next witness, Mr.
I
Video?
think we have another hand,
Oh, I'm sorry. Who now?
Ms. Andrews.
Miss Andrews. I don't see. Oh, well, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Roseanne. You're muted, Roseanne. We can't hear you.
I think she's having a problem.
Yeah. Try and unmute yourself, please, Roseanne. And now that's muted. Do it the other way.
One more.
Now try it.
Yeah.
Roseanne, try clicking the little arrow next to the microphone and selecting a different microphone.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
There's like a little tilde next to it. Try clicking that.
All this high-tech stuff here. Looking at the wrong person for that.
To the right of the picture of the microphone, there's a little like greater than, or like an arrow, a half of an arrow. Touch that and it'll display another microphone. Okay, I don't think that's going to work, unfortunately, at this point. While we get that tech, Roseanne, try it now. Okay, we still can't hear you. Well, let's work on that technical issue and maybe write your question down. And in the meantime, Mr. Villela, you could start with your next witness.
Miss Andrews, maybe you can try calling in.
Oh, we could hear that way. Should we wait for that phone call real quick?
Can we just give her 2
We can
minutes?
try it. Yeah, we can.
Yes,
Sure. Yeah.
Roseanne, you can call in using the number and join in as attendee and just raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you could talk. Natalie, can you please display the call-in sheet? Roseanne, the calling numbers will be on the screen for you.
I'm also having technical difficulties, so please bear with me.
Okay.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we move on to the next witness? And certainly Roseanne can ask any questions she wants before we take any deliberation on this.
I would agree, Mr. Sachs.
Okay. All right.
Okay. That's very good. So Mr. Martin has with us here also tonight. We have our traffic expert. So I would ask Shri to speak up at this time. Are you there? Hello?
I'm looking for Shri. I don't see him.
I believe it is, I believe he's joined in as an attendee and I just promoted him to be, is that you?
I don't know. Huh.
I don't know who we're looking for.
I think we're looking for Shri, who is an engineer.
Okay.
Who I'm familiar with.
Is that you, Shri?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yes,
where are you,
Shri,
Shri?
can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can
Okay.
you,
Can you hear me?
yes, is your telephone number 843?
848203.
I'm looking, I see somebody else on the screen here. I don't see
No,
on the screen.
it's me. Just is the ID number I put it for the Zoom meeting.
Okay, are you going to be able to do a video? Are we going to be able to see you?
Yes, I'm doing. No, it's my video is on somehow. Hold on.
Now I see your name. Okay.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting closer.
Okay, can I start talking? I'm trying to figure out how the video. I don't know what happened suddenly, but can
All right.
I?
Well, yes, yeah, we'll let, all right. Please raise your right hand, although I can't see it, but I'll swear you in. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Please state your name, spelling your last name, and professional affiliation for the record.
My name is Shri, SHRI, J. Kodawala, KOTDAWLA. I'm a professional engineer in state of New Jersey since 1999 and doing land use engineering work since 1995. And I have a PhD degree in civil engineering from Kansas State University. And any other
No,
additional?
we'll accept your credentials.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we know Sri.
Yes.
He's testified many
Thank
times
you.
in the past.
Yes, he
We
has.
can't see him, so.
I
that's
know we
fine.
can't see him, but I recognize his voice.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Uh,
Sri. You've heard the testimony so far tonight, correct? Sri?
Yes, I heard that.
So I'll ask you, you have prepared, he has prepared a traffic report that was requested by the board after we had submitted our application. So we had gone ahead and had him study the site, study the engineering drawings for what's proposed, and prepare his report. So can you describe for the board how the traffic condition would change from what's approved today and how the site would function?
Yes, I heard about some comments from the board member, but as far as the trip generation is concerned, we are not expecting any increase in a trip generation. So number of cars coming in and going out per day will not change. But the only issue is I heard that many board members had already asked about the access and safety and in and out easiness of vehicles. So we can, if board feels comfortable, then they can give us an approval, and as well as we can go to DOT and get either a letter of waiver that we do not need to do anything, or if DEP requires us to do some changes to our entrance and exit or ingress and egress, we will provide those changes and to the township professionals, we can submit those information. So that was my kind of thinking about this project.
Yes, and that would certainly answer some of the questions about DOT rights, access approvals, and items like that. I think that would alleviate any of those concerns.
Yeah, and the safety, yes, the safety is the main thing about vehicle entering in and coming out, as well as the people who are just taking a jug handle to make a U-turn.
Right.
So all of those three concerns will be solved. At least we can comfortably say that, hey, we are conforming to DOT's requirement for this particular project.
And in terms of vehicles entering the site and exiting the site, you've heard the testimony about the limousine service that was previously approved there. Some customers actually visiting the site, some just limousine drivers returning again and again. You've heard about those vehicles. You know what's permitted in this zone, including uses where members of the average public would have occasion to visit the site. And you've heard testimony about the used car use, the number of employees that would visit the site, and also new buyers occasionally visiting the site. Can you describe for us how you think traffic entering and exiting would work? Would it work safely in terms of repeat customers and new customers?
What I have done is we just have calculated what's the anticipated traffic with the limousine business as well as for the used car business. And we calculated it's a 57 trips a day we are expecting from the site. So, and with a used car, we calculated about 56. So it's almost same. Like I don't see any difference in a traffic there. Yes, definitely. Instead of limousine, we might be seeing used cars traveling.
And no buses.
No buses.
Right, with the proposed use.
Yes. So.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sri. If you had any other comments about the application, please feel free to address the board. Otherwise, we'll also take questions from the board members.
I don't have nothing more to say in this aspect. As I told you, we will just knock the DOT's door with our application that here is what we are doing. And if they say no, we see as this land use change is impacting the safety of any motorist, we might have to apply for a permit, and then we will apply for a permit and obtain the permit for this particular use. Because I'm not aware of the fact that we had any DOT permit before, or maybe it is historic. So I don't have on my hand, or I could not find any old permits. So.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, are there any questions for this testimony?
Yeah, I have a big one. Why didn't you just do that in the first place? Why would we wait?
I don't have I don't have an answer. for
I
that.
didn't think so.
I don't have an answer.
It's
So
kind of
you
rhetorical.
go on the record with a lawyer who doesn't have an answer to the question.
Let me see from the professionals. Where is Mr. Blank? You have any questions of Sri?
I do not have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sawant?
Yeah, sure. Shri, I just didn't follow one comment of yours. You said that this would generate less traffic or the same amount of traffic, but when Mr. Carr was explaining, I thought there would be people visiting the site. There would be cars driven into the site. Some of them would come as deliveries on the platform. So I don't quite understand. And I know there's a lot of discussion going on about the limousine service that was in place. But to begin with, this site actually had a single family home. The single family home was an existing nonconformity on the in the OG2 zone. A lot of history, which I learned from the building department. The single family home came in first for renovations. When the building inspector went for inspection, they found out that the changes that were done were consistent with commercial use. And so there was some sort of stop order. They started questioning what's going on. Then it turns out that the single family home was being converted to an office use. The applicant was asked to go in front of the board and seek a use variance, go to the planning board and get an approval for office use. The planning board heard the application. It was an office use with no tenant associated with it. The planning board approves it for office use because it's a permitted use in that zone. After the office use was approved and there was no tenant, a year later, a CCO was filed with the building department for a sales office with auto storage. And turns out that obviously that means it's a dealership. The applicant was asked to again go to the zoning board. The CCO was not issued. The engineering and planning office asked the applicant to rightfully pursue a zoning board approval. In the interim, there was a business that was operated without any approvals as a used car dealership on the site. There's some historic imagery that showed that it did exist. Even today, if you go and search up for the business, it still shows the same address. What I'm trying to say here is gradually over a period of time, the use of the property has changed from being a single family home to a car dealership, unauthorized car dealership. Then a limousine service. Extensive testimony was provided when the limousine service came in front of the zoning board. So I think what we need to look at is what was the original use, and also look at our master plan. I think 2 years back, I revised our master plan. The OG zone, we know that offices are failing. I know there's discussion about if it was an office use, then it would have a more intense use. But our master plan was amended 2 years back. I amended the master plan, and where we studied a lot of properties where office use was previously approved, but were never built. And those property owners were coming back to the township saying there's no demand for offices because people are working remotely, and we need to do something else on the property. Pursuant to that, we went and amended our master plan. There was a recommendation made in the master plan that the OG zone needs to be reevaluated to find out if other non-residential uses can be allowed or can go on to those properties. With the location in mind, with the access being an issue, this site certainly needs to be reevaluated as to what type of use can go on the property. And I think even the basis of the previous application's approval was the fact that only a benign use can go on a property like that, which has limited access, no direct access to US 9. All of our existing dealerships, I know Old Bridge has plenty full of them, and all of them have direct access from Route 9. So I didn't quite follow when you said that the trips generated are fewer than before or equivalent. So can you elaborate? Or maybe I'm missing something.
No, actually, what we picked up this numbers from IT manual. They give us the code based on the square feet, based on the use. So now we calculated that we are anticipating 56 trips. Now, and before, usually the limousine business is not mentioned in IT 10 generation manual. So we made an assumption there that this is the number based on a retail use of the property. So IT manual on 10th generation does not specifically advises how a limousine business generated traffic trips. So what we are saying that now we have a 56 trips with a new use or the proposed use. So per day. So that's why when I was hearing this discussion, I thought is we will go to DOT and get an access permit for this property.
Shri, I agree with that. And I just want to chime in one thing. With the limousine service, there was, again, elaborate testimony. And the testimony was the basis of board's approval, in which the applicant had said that the limousine service purely works on through phone or internet, because nobody's really coming to test drive a limousine. Nobody's coming to check out a limousine, right? You call in, you book, and you come and pick up and you take it. There is no test drive. So there are 2 employees who just take bookings for the limousine service. And that's pretty much it. From what I am hearing tonight is that there will be people on site. There will be patrons who will want to check out the car. There will be patrons who will want to test drive the car. There will be deliveries coming to the site. There will be cars driven to the site to be dropped off. So the whole rationale that the limousine service would have the same trip generation as this use really doesn't fly.
I agree with you after hearing what you gave me some historic perspective. I solely made these numbers based on the use, like limousine use and the used car use. But knowing that what was discussed in the previous meetings and what was at the town hall, I agree with you that I needed to go and see more historic discussion happen at the planning board before, and I'll check it out. And the key is we know that with a new business, we are anticipating 56 trips per day, which is a used car under the IT, like a manual. So my presumption of maybe having the same traffic may be wrong based on what I've been hearing now. And I'll check it out, and as well as we will submit to DOT. So DOT is going to know that 57 cars are going to be coming in and out here at this particular place. And if they feel that this site needs alteration as far as the ingress and egress, we will redesign the ingress and egress out of the property and update you with whatever our process does at DOT. So board.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, Shri, finish.
So I thought this would be some solution where we will just submit to DOT as an access permit. And DOT is going to look at what will be the proposed use and is it possible with the geometry of the site and geometry of ingress and egress. And DOT is very watchful and they look things very carefully. So if we have whatever the entrances we have, if deemed to be unsafe, they would ask us to do alteration and we will provide that alteration.
Shri, one more thing I want to add. when you do your research, when you come back with your revised information, you should also look at the township's master plan. In the a few months back, actually, the township has adopted a redevelopment plan for the Glenwood Country Club that has access through Fairway Lane. And Larry, I would just like to share the Google Earth imagery so that I can explain it to Shri as well as the board members so that they
Sure.
have a perspective of what's going on in that area, if you may.
Go ahead.
So board members, this is our site. This is the existing building. This is the garage, the entrance. You see there's a bus lane. There's a bus stop right here. This is the ramp that goes to Fairway Lane. Now, if you look at, I'm going to stop sharing and share the township's GIS imagery. Here we are. This one here, this is our the subject property right here, the triangle, the pie-shaped property. You'll see it is exactly at the ramp to Fairway Lane. Fairway Lane turns in on the right side, and this huge piece, the Glenwood Country Club, is under the redevelopment area. And I'm going to zoom in. This entire area, what you see on their screen in red, including all these properties, the Board of Ed property on Jake Brown Road, this piece of property that abuts Jake Brown Road, the Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club, all these areas on either side of Jake Brown Road. So these two farms on northbound and southbound side of Jake Brown Road, and then this entire piece of property is all under our redevelopment plan. There is an application that is currently in front of the planning board for warehousing on this piece of property. There is a proposed warehouse building on this piece of property and the gun club too. The Fairway Lane entrance is going to be used by the truck traffic. Also, as part of the redevelopment plan, there are significant improvements proposed along Jake Brown Road that goes back on and connects to Bordentown Road at the back, so that the truck traffic also gets diverted to Bordentown and that direction, as well as has an option to go back to Route 9. So right at the entrance of this area, there is going to be some sort of increased activity. And I think for you, when you're looking at the traffic, I think it's important for you to look at what's going to happen in the surrounding, in the vicinity as well. I think the critical part is the bus lane, which is more actually apparent when you look at the aerial here. This is your bus lane. There is a bus stop right here. There are crosswalks here. People do walk to the bus stop. So now you have your deliveries and people coming in this way. There is truck traffic also entering for an approved redevelopment plan or a redevelopment area. Things that you should look at before you come back to the board and before you do your research. So something, and feel free to reach out to me. The plan is available on the township's website. There is extensive circulation and traffic element included in the redevelopment plan. So you will notice the improvements that are proposed within the area as well when you look at the plan.
Okay. No, thank you very much for sharing that map as well as the information. I'll definitely, basically we have to do some macro analysis now and not just focus on our property. and look some overall impact study. And as well as we will see how DOT also has their own feedback into the system. So
Thank you. Thank you. Shri, I appreciate that. Mr. Martin also has more information about the limousine use. So I'd like to see if he briefly wants to address the board. I know you've heard a lot of testimony about a limousine use and a used car lot. You know, limousines, I think, need to come in and out of the lot every day to make money for a successful business. There are limousine uses where somebody owns another use, like a catering hall, and they have a limousine parked on the side. I've seen FBOs at airports park 2, 3 limousines on the side. They're ancillary parts of those businesses. But for a real limousine use with buses and going to New York City, they're moving all the time to keep the business afloat. I drive by used car lots all the time. I really don't see anyone in them. There's one near my house that's been here forever. I don't know if I've ever seen a person in it. But let me just ask Mr. Martin if he could briefly talk about how the limousine use was previously operated there.
Mr. Vitilo, if I may, I know our traffic consultant has been trying to raise his hand, and I think.
Oh, please, I'm sorry.
Speak.
Yeah, please.
If we can have him speak first before.
Yes.
Mr.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Vina, and Michael, maybe this might help help the conversation. From my, I know we've talked a lot about uses and trip generation. How many trips a day were we looking at on the limo? Shri has indicated the ITE manual says approximately, say, 60 trips a day. I mean, in my mind, it's not a capacity issue. It's what are the trips entering and exiting against, and what are the conditions on the ramp? What is the volume of the ramp? What is the speed of the vehicles of the ramp? Because whether we go from 30 trips a day to 50 trips a day, say you go to 60 trips a day, in your mind, you're like, well, that's not many. Well, you're still doubling the exposure of vehicles coming against whatever is coming at them on that right turn lane. And to date, I certainly have not, I don't believe there's been anything presented that shows either a volume or a speed assessment, available sight distance, any kind of accident history at that location. And in my mind, as a traffic engineer, if for this particular application, that's more of the crux of the issue than is it generating 20 or 30 more cars a day? Because in my opinion, it will generate some more trips, but what are you then exposing those additional trips to as far as conditions, not only in the existing conditions, but in the future conditions that Vina has presented for the regional growth around. I just wanted to put that out there for the board's consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While we have Shri still here, are there any other board members that had a question for him? I thought, Mr. Sikowski, did you have your hand up before? No? Okay.
I did. It was more of like a comment or, oh, I'm sorry, it was a question. Because I'm not sure how the numbers of the numbers. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, been a long day. That number, 56 trips in and out. Is that with the understanding that somebody will likely take a trip to the lot and then leave the lot with a car for a test drive, come back, leave again for another test drive, and come back?
Typically, this numbers IT generates based on the uses around the nation, and they anticipate whenever you say used car dealership, they anticipate employees, visitors, occasional visitors. All those trips are calculated and kind of they have created their own metrics, and they came up with this number. So we kind of honor those numbers.
And I think it represents total trips. Was your question sort of, is one of those 56 trips one person who then drives 3 cars and is really 3 more trips? I think the number is actually anticipated to include all of that. So these would be the expected, if Sri can confirm, the expected total trips based on ITE at least.
Yes.
Understood. I'm not a professional in that area. Thank you.
No,
very
no,
much.
it's a good question.
Yeah,
It's
I
certainly,
appreciate it.
it's a
Thank
good
you.
question. Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, thank you. Mr. Scogno, you were waving your
Yes,
hand.
just a point of order. Tree, did you indicate that upon approval, then you could approach the DOT?
Usually in our practice, we most of the time we tell the board professional that this projects, this act in entrance and exit may be approved by DOT. So with that confidence, we sometimes get the approval and we pursue with SCS, like soil conservation district, DOT access permit, and DEP permits. Those three usually we go sometimes parallel with the planning board, or sometimes we go after the planning board or zoning board approvals with the conditions attached with the approval.
Yeah, I would
So,
prefer the
so
latter.
if board professional does not feel comfortable, they will try to advise to the board that, hey, let's wait, or they will say, okay, we can give them an approval, but subject to getting following permits from different agencies.
Well, President Sullivan, that's up to you.
Well, Leon, no, I think Mr. Sachs even hit on it earlier. We don't really know if there ever was anything done. Correct, Larry?
Yeah, and I do have one question for Sri, but and I guess he answered one of them. So Sri, you don't have on your, you haven't been able to obtain any permit or approval for this entrance to this site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now I may be showing my age here. And I think I know where most of you grew up. But I obviously grew up here my whole life. I do remember when Route 9, and I'm talking about when I was a little kid back in the early 60s, Route 9 was basically a 3-lane road. It had one lane going in each direction, and it had a passing lane in the middle. And I believe this section of Route 9 probably had that, and was probably improved maybe in the mid 60s. So knowing that there was a house there, I would think that that house was there before the slip ramp was even put in at Fairway. So what probably happened is when they put the slip ramp in, they probably condemned some of that property in order to put the slip ramp in on this property, and left them a driveway for a residential use. I would tend to doubt that there was ever an approval for access to any commercial use, any subsequent commercial use on this property. But that's just anecdotal knowledge of living in this area my whole life for the last 64 years. So in any event, I think that's the story with that, Mr. Chairman. And my last question for the traffic engineer is, just so the record is clear, you couldn't find in the ITE standards anything specifically for limousine business. Is that correct, Sri?
Yes.
Okay, so basically you took some type of retail number and that's how you equated the trips.
That's correct.
All right. I mean, I tend to think that, and again, I'm not a traffic engineer, I'm not an expert, but I've listened to enough traffic testimony over the last 38 years of practicing law that I just don't think that a limousine business will generate as much traffic as a used car lot, but that's just my opinion on this. But anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Saxon. And Leon, I think that spoke to your point, correct? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to go back to Mr. Vidiello so you can have an, I think. Oh, well, Roseanne, let's see if you can. Well, you got to take the. Okay, try it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. What is it that you would like to ask?
No, I'm interested in knowing, how does the church feel about this? It's very, very close in proximity. I've been watching it on another computer as far as where it goes and how it goes. What does the church have to say about it?
At present, they haven't said anything, because that would come under a public portion if there's going to be any comment. So that would be a little later on.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Larry, did you?
Mr. Chairman, just one question. I know Mr. Clauser texted me and wanted to know if we think we're going to get to his application this evening. Because Mr. Vidiello, I know you have another witness, right? You have your planner still?
Well, I mean, Mr. Martin wanted to briefly address the board, and we could discuss whether my planning testimony would typically conclude after all my other testimony is on.
All right.
So if we're going to present some additional traffic testimony, my planning testimony may have to wait. So I may
All right.
only have Mr. Martin at this point.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, up to you. If you want to have Mr. Clauser join us
Well,
somewhere.
yeah, I'm guessing that with Mr. Vidiello, you're going to have Mr. Martin testify, right?
Yes, he's right there in the.
And then you're going to want your, did you say your traffic engineer to do something else, or your planner, right?
Well, I believe my traffic engineer testified that he
Right.
was going to study the site further.
Okay. So are you going to rest after Mr. Martin?
I would confer briefly with my client, but I believe that may be the case.
If that were the case, then I would Larry, I would think then we would get to Mr. Clauser.
Okay. Peter, I see you there on the screen. I mean, I think we can at least get you started tonight. So I don't know if we'll get through your application, but
I'm here to
certainly we
work.
can.
So
Okay.
yeah, Mr. Chair, and Larry, I leave it up to you. You tell me. We're here. Our
Right.
people are here. So
Okay.
let me know.
I have no
Okay.
problem with it, Peter. It's 20 to 10, and I think maybe Mr. Martin talks for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can get you going.
Okay,
Is that all right?
that's great. Yeah,
Okay.
I got the troops here. So
Okay, very good, very good. Mr. Vidiello, it's back to you.
Yeah, Mr. Martin, you heard some of the testimony tonight.
Going to be sworn in.
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
swear him in. Thank you. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the
You're
truth. So help
muted,
you
you're
God?
muted. You're muted.
Mr. Martin, you are muted. You have to turn there you go.
Okay.
Yes, I
Swear-
do, Larry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
Yes, Steve Martin, Martin, 24 North Disbro Hill Road, Monroe Township, New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. So you've heard some of the testimony here in the discussions about the prior uses and how the proposed use would work. You've also heard information about the traffic counts, anticipated demand, and the existing access road. Can you talk to us a little bit about the prior user and how the limousine service operated on the site?
Yes, Michael. I've owned this property since 2003, and I've had other different tenants along the way, and worked the property from the residential use through the process to get everything into the current business use of OG2. The limousine business, I was very familiar with. I stopped, I helped them. I referred them a lot. I was very good friends with the one gentleman that was running the business. He had 13 limousines, 2 very expensive ones that he parked in the garage. Well, these limousines were airport trips, an hour picking you up in the morning, coming back. Each one of these limousines had an employee. Only one person can drive the car at a time. So when you look at the trips going back and forth to the airport, that's every 2 hours, every 3 hours on 8 of the different limousine cars, those trips on a limousine business were, I'm going to say, at least triple of what we're looking at on a 29 spot used car lot, which is generating usually 2 cars sales a day. Okay. Internet car sales is a use that people show up like I did the Ray Catinas when I went to buy my daughter a Lexus, and it looked great on the internet, looked great in the pictures, but when I got there, I noticed the dog scratches, the cat smell in the car, the cigarette smell. I'm like, whoa, at this point, I don't want this car. But you want to, of course, drive in, smell it, see it, make sure it's what it's in the internet ads. So on the limousine business, they had the 29 passenger to 40 passenger limousine, very large, coming out of that turn, going onto the our exit ramp right there. That was a difficult turn. When the limousine business was there, we did not have any accidents. And the usage, I mean, he was running a 7-day operation. The used car dealership is not open on Sunday, so the church will not have any issues with that. The limousine business was open on Sundays for weddings, funerals, airport rides. He had a very, very successful business until that accident they had. They generated a good amount of revenue, never had an issue paying their rent, and there was a lot more trips generated by a limousine business than a 29 slot used car lot, where people shop totally now on the internet. And I mean, we have car dealers on the internet where they're bringing a car to you and dropping it off, in your neighborhood for you to check out and drive. I mean, look at a place like Carvana that you could buy on the internet and they bring it to your front door, and now you're unloading in the middle of the street. I think the internet car sales on Route 9, where the person is coming off Route 9 safely, reviewing their car, smelling their car, making sure it's the right car for them, and then safely leaving after they sign their paperwork. I don't see most used car dealers, they are selling on a Monday through Thursday, probably 1 unit a day. Friday, Saturday is usually their busy time, where Route 9 might not be as busy on Route 9 on Saturday morning or Saturday midday. So I think the trip generation on a limousine business that was there, that was working pretty much almost 24/7 because they had the airport trips, that was extensive coming in and out of that location and did not have any accidents. And I believe the used car lot is going to generate a whole lot less trips than the limousine did. As far as I know, there was no accidents at all since I've owned that property coming in and out of the exit ramp there. It's fairly safe. We did have the sign put up where you cannot go on to Route 9 as part of the last approval. And I do believe, this is a great use for the site based on the use of the internet and the ability for somebody to stop easily in Old Bridge and patronize a business that is on Route 9 in an economic development area. So the internet's great until you to get your product. Everyone knows we order product on the internet, and of course, what happens? We want to send it back because it's not exactly what they said it was. So this is the same way. They put their car online. There's a software program where they list all the cars online. You like it, and all of a sudden you want to go check it out. Let me make sure it looks like it is. Smell it, make sure it's right, and then they proceed with the purchase. So just my comments. I want to again yield back to Michael for any other questions.
Thank you. As you can see, board, Mr. Martin had a particular familiarity regarding that particular use and the traffic that we had there previously. So we thought it was important to at least describe what we knew in that respect. Again, you've also heard our traffic engineer talking about reviewing a few additional items and some of the surrounding area issues and being able to speak back to the board on that. I'm not sure it makes sense to have planning testimony on if we're going to have some revised traffic testimony from our traffic engineer. So what I would ask is if the board could give me a 2-minute adjournment, I'd like to just discuss very briefly with my team before we take our next steps. I think I could do it in 2 minutes. Oh, you're still.
Hey, Jim, you're muted.
That's fine. I still have to go to a public portion though, Mr. Video.
Understood.
Okay.
I'll just be back with you in 2 minutes.
Well, we'll stand fast rather than take a recess. Okay. If you're gonna make a phone call.
I'm gonna make a phone call right now.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay.
No problem. And Mr. Clauser, as I said, you're still there, right? We'll get to you soon. I'll just have to open a public portion, obviously.
Okay.
If you're watching at home and you don't understand what was going on, the attorney representing the applicant is having a personal conversation with his client off the record, and that should only take a minute or two, at which time we'll come back and open a public portion up this evening. So if you have any questions or concerns about this particular application that we've been listening to, there's phone numbers on the screen in front of you. However you're watching us, it's time to dial one of those now and you'll be put into a queue. And of course, the board will listen to you live when the line is opened up by the moderator of this webinar. So once again, please feel free to call in now. That's going to be the last, what we'll do this evening is the public portion. And it would appear that the attorney for the applicant will carry this matter to another date. While I'm here, Ms. C, is there anyone in the queue at all? Not that I'm going to take them right now, but is there anybody in there?
I see two, although I'm not sure if.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's fine. We have to wait for Mr. Vidiello to come back first, but thank you. Yeah, once again, folks, if you're interested in this matter, this is the used car application for a used car lot at 2298 Route 9 South. That's at the intersection of Fairway Lane on the southbound side of Route 9. Please feel free to call in now. We are on a short break, just waiting for the attorney for the applicant to come back from a phone call. And I believe I have one other question. Debbie Masterson is the stenographer. Are you going to do the next one as well?
I am waiting to do the next one.
Oh, you didn't do the first one?
No,
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought maybe you did.
no problem.
Okay. In anticipation of a continuance, Ms. C, do we have a date for Mr. Video?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. Is there a court reporter online here?
I thought it was Debbie. Is there anyone?
Okay.
God.
I'll ask Mr. Vidiello when he comes back on.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Chairman. How are you? Sorry about that.
Mr. Sachs has a question for you, sir.
Oh, yes, please, sir.
Mr. Vidiello, did you have a court reporter here for this evening?
We did not. We have the recording going on. So we understood that would be the official record.
Well, that's just so you know, that's not our procedure. That's not in our rules and regulations. We do require you to have a court reporter. I think we were all under the impression that Ms. Masterton, who is here presumably for the next application, was covering this for you as well. So what I would suggest is at your next hearing, make sure you have a court reporter here.
Yeah, no problem. If you want an additional, like a second record, yeah, we could definitely do that.
Well,
But
no,
I think
we require it on all D1 use variant, on all D variances. It's in our bylaws that we adopt every year, that we require the attendance of a court reporter at any application requiring a use variance. So
understood, but you're not saying that we have to repeat all the testimony that we started.
no, I'm not saying we have to
Oh.
repeat it, but what I do think you may have to do is you may have to get a tape of this and have it transcribed for us.
To each of your D1 applicants send in transcripts?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
This would be, I guess, available on YouTube to you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
All right. I
Let
thought
me,
we were under the impression Ms. Masterton was your court reporter. But-
Yeah, I will always bring one if someone tells me I need to bring one.
Okay.
I understand.
No problem.
So I just wanted to clarify with Shri. Shri had mentioned that he was going to look at some additional traffic issues. I think, Shri, correct me if I'm wrong, you were going to look at some of the surrounding area. You said more of a macro analysis based on some of the things that the board planner has mentioned. Is that correct? So you're going to take a look at that, and then we'll come back and you can present your testimony based on what you do or don't find?
That's correct.
Okay, so that we won't be appearing before you again with a DOT permit in our hand. We can certainly talk about that. And I think Shree's indicated he would apply for one. But at this point, we want our traffic engineer, he's indicated he's going to do this additional review these additional issues, and then we'd come back to you with that information. At that point, once we're able to finish that, we'd also be able to give you our planner's testimony.
Mr. Vitiello, I understood him to say differently. I thought
Okay.
he said if you were granted an approval on the application, he would seek information from DOT whether or not something was necessary.
Okay.
I asked you, sir, why wasn't that done already? And you said, I really don't have an answer. So
Wait, no, when you said why wasn't that done already, I thought what you meant was when my traffic consultant said, that's fine, we'll apply to the DOT. I thought what you were saying is, why didn't you just tell us that you would apply earlier? That's what I thought you were talking about.
Okay, well, I interpret it as.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you, because when I
Okay.
said I don't know, I don't have an answer for you, I just meant,
If
I
he's,
don't know, yeah.
if he's going to do a study or whatever he's going to put together to present to the board, I don't understand why he couldn't make a phone call, because that's really all he said he was going to do to the DOT in the meantime. He may or may not get an answer. I don't know.
No,
I don't know
so-
if they respond that way.
The reason I brought this up is exactly because of this. I just wanted so that everybody was on the same page. So I appreciate having the discussion, because I wanted to make sure that, I know Sri mentioned some things on the record now that he said he wants to do. So I was just exactly the reason. I'm trying to make sure there's no confusion. So Sri, why don't you speak up and address for us what you're going to do prior to the next hearing?
Okay. As I discussed before, we'll two things. One is, at least we will make a phone call to DOT, or we'll try to connect with them and see that this change in a use would trigger any bigger permit, or we will manage with the minor access permit or no permit at all. So that answer, I can find it out, as well as whatever the Veena said about the overall development happening in that area. We need to kind of at least give a look at it and see that does really this change in a use on a subject property is going to be impacted because of that new development which is coming in and putting more traffic on that ramp. Does it really affect this business or no? That kind of study we will do. We will present it to the township professionals and see how they review our data and have any other further comments before we come back to the board.
Mr. Sachs, I'll defer to you.
Well, listen, I can't tell the applicant how to prosecute their application, so I'll leave it up to the applicant. That's really up to them, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine by me.
I'm confused though. So he's indicated what he planned to do and come back with. It seems like there's another question or something.
No, there's no question. Certainly, it's I'll let you proceed with your case. In my opinion, I think you need more than that, but that's.
In terms of what additional, it's a good comment. What would we be talking about?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you've ever gotten an approval of this entrance off of the slip ramp. So I'd like to find out some more information about that.
Well, I think if he finds out if an approval's needed for what we propose now, doesn't that answer the question either way?
I don't think, well, I don't know. I'm going to leave that up to your traffic engineer, and then I'm going to leave it up to a response from the township's traffic engineer.
Okay.
All right, but it's your case. I'll let you proceed on whatever basis you want, Mr. Video.
I mean, I wasn't the attorney for the limo application, but there was no discussion of that for the limo application.
There absolutely was. There was a comment from the former planner, Mr. Rizzo, that one of the preconditions was to obtain some type of an approval from NJDOT.
Oh.
I think Ms. Sawant indicated that this evening. Is that correct, Veena?
So in his review, he did mention, was there any approval? But it was like a question mark that was left.
Right.
I didn't see any testimony that was provided at the hearing, but I didn't have all the transcripts. So maybe I will do some research on my end to see if we can get those transcripts too.
Yeah, we will certainly dig for any information we have also on that same issue, for sure. I understand what you're saying. We're not trying to avoid anything in particular. I just, I've adjourned and come back to a hearing in the past and had somebody say, well, wait a minute, what about X? I thought you were doing X. So that's why I just brought it up, because I'm trying to minimize the chance of that happening.
Right.
The only thing I've noted is that the traffic engineer said he'll make a phone call to DOT and attempt to inquire if a permit might be needed.
Yeah, and we'll look for any existing permits that we might be able to locate. Shri, is it okay to indicate that we would look for any existing permits that we might be able to locate for this access point?
That's correct. We will look for that, and as well as when we write to DOT with all the details, that here is what it was and this is what we are trying to do. DOT is automatically going to trigger their review process and tell us that, hey, these are the permits you will need, and this is the kind of application we have to make there. So we will be basically trying to solve this thing technicality first, and then kind of come back to the board. And we will also try to stay in touch with the township professionals to see that they are also accepting our research, our study, and our application process.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment. Okay.
Okay. You have anything else, Mr. Vidiello? Can you let me go to a public portion and then I'll give you a final word?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly, of course.
Okay. Once again, I had mentioned this when you, in fairness to you, I did speak to the public at large. I didn't accept any calls. There was 2 phone calls in queue. I don't know if they still are, but once again, I'll make the announcement that the phone numbers that you see in front of you are for the public to call in should you have any questions about this application. It's 24-2021Z, located at the intersection, basically the intersection of Route 9 and Fairway Lane, 2298 Route 9 South. If you have any questions, please dial one of the numbers. Ms. C, do we have anyone in queue at present?
I do not see any raised hands. However, there are 2 attendees. So I will just confirm. The first is Dan Rudd.
Okay.
Please unmute.
Yeah, I have no comment on this application.
Okay, thank you, sir. And you said there was one other one, Natalie, or no?
Yes, Mr. Tony Pisciotti.
Mr. Biscotti, can you unmute? You're not. You're not coming through. Yeah, you're not coming through, sir. If there's a problem, Mr. Biscotti, maybe you could try one of the other phone numbers to call in if you were interested. And if not, we'll give you a short period of time to redial. And other than that, Natalie, that's the last one.
Yes.
Okay, let's just give it 30 seconds, and if we get it, we'll see if we get another phone call from that caller. If not, then I'll close the portion for the evening.
I have no comment, Jim.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Sachs, we've entertained the public long enough, correct?
Yes, I think we can close the public portion.
All right, public portion is closed on
Chairman-
this application
Chairman-
for this evening.
Chairman Sullivan,
Yes.
our engineer has a question since the applicant is planning to return back to the board, and I think we can just have him speak so that
Sure.
if there's anything the applicant needs to work on, that gives him fair amount of time to work on it.
Understood.
And I just wanted to revisit the stormwater since this will be adjourned and heard at the next zoning board meeting, like the site engineer to explore the stormwater management design for this property and prepare a proposal along with like a drainage report to support the stormwater management for the site to address all the regulations.
That's fine. Mr. Vidiella?
Yes, Mr. Carr, I'll have Mr.
Yes.
Carr respond to that.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. We'll do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carr. You get the last word, Mr. Vidiella.
Mr. Chairman, we thank you all for your time tonight and the technical issues. I think it was excellent. Otherwise, if you could just tell us what date we might be adjourned to and make an announcement regarding notice, we would appreciate that.
The next meeting is December 2nd.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Vidiella?
I don't see any of my professionals. Mr. Carr, Sri, can you confirm that that date works?
We'll double check. I am not available on December 2nd.
Okay. We do have another meeting that month, but I don't know if the professionals are available.
Yeah, the other meeting would be a C night.
Yep. So that would
When's
take
our first meeting? Yeah, to January. What's our first meeting in January?
Natalie, can you pull the calendar, the next schedule?
January 6th is the reorg meeting.
Not that one, so we'll have to go to
January 20.
Well, no, you could schedule us on the 6th. It's a regular meeting also.
Yeah.
You could do it on January 6th.
Is that okay?
Yeah. There's the board. So January 6th, and we would carry notice tonight to January 6th.
Yes, Vina, what are we doing with, I guess you got to get, he needs a link though, right? So doesn't he have to
Right.
renotice?
He definitely has to renotice, whether we are on Zoom or whether we are in person.
Because of the link.
Yes. So, Mr. Vitiolo, I think you can call me beforehand or reach out to me and we will take it from there. If it is still going to be a virtual meeting, I will share the meeting ID and password with you to be included in the notice. If we are going to be back in the courtroom, I will let you know accordingly.
Yeah, if we're going to be back in the courtroom, I would think that we don't need to renotice, because I'll make an announcement right now that the application is being carried to January 6th. If that application is going to be heard in the municipal courtroom, you will not receive any further notice. If it's going to be virtually, then you will receive notice with the appropriate link.
Thank you. And we consent to the extension of time to
That was my next
January
question.
6th, within which the board must act.
Let's extend it till the end of January if we can, Mr. Vidiella, just to play it safe. In case
Understood.
Yes,
Yes,
so
January
31st. January 31st. Okay. And one other thing, if you can, it gives you enough time. If you can get us a transcript of these proceedings, it should be rather easy since it's on YouTube. So, all right. And just to make sure you have a court, in any event, even if we're back in the courtroom or virtually, make sure you have a court reporter in attendance.
Yes, I made that note. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.
Right, that would complete this application for the evening to be continued. Mr. Vidiella, thank you and your professionals for your
Thank you.
appearance tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, Ms. Masterson, are you prepared to start?
I'm ready.
Okay, well, we're ready too, because we're going to move forward. This is matter 34-2021Z, Calvary Chapel, Old Bridge, the R120 zone, the CC zone, and the SD1 is a mix. This is block 9,000, lot 11 and 12.15. The physical location is 123 White Oak Lane for a proposed church parking lot, seeking major preliminary and final site plan and D variance. Peter Claus is representing the applicant, sir.
Chairman, members of the board, your professional staff, Peter Klauser with the firm Halber and Pape on behalf of the applicant, Calvary Chapel, Old Bridge. I'm sure the board is familiar with White Oak Lane and the Calvary Chapel Church that is there and exists. And so they exist there as a tenant. The property owner, the landlord, has found property behind them, which is lot 11, which is pretty significantly encumbered with wetlands. However, as God would have it, right connected behind the church is where there are uplands. So there's an opportunity to create a parking field there to alleviate some of the parking that's on White Oak Lane that occurs with the church activities. So they put together a team to create a parking lot in that area within the wetlands and some stormwater management. And we're asking for preliminary and final site plan and then use variance relief because the portion of lot 11 that's it's spelled out in Vina's report very nicely. The portion of lot 11 where the parking lot would go is the R120 zone. Parking lots are not permitted in the residential zone, so technically we need a use variance. But this is driven by servicing the church. There's also a number of waivers that are requested by the applicant for the parking lot design. Normally I would probably have some particular arguments about them, but the property where the parking lot is, as you'll see on the map, is located right inside of the wetlands. It's heavily vegetated around it. We wanted to maximize the number of parking spaces, so that's why we're asking for the relief from landscaped islands and landscaping and things like that. They would just waste, in this instance, the opportunity to have more parking. And I think the goal of this application is to get as many parking spots out there as possible for the church. I have 3 witnesses. We'll see how we do. Bhaskar is here from Concept Engineering. We have Jay Troutman from McDonough Ray, and then we have Jim Higgins is our planner. So I won't waste any time. Bhaskar is going to testify as to the existing conditions and the proposed use and address some of the comments in your professional reports. So if I could have him sworn, Mr. Sachs, we can get started.
Mr. Hilary, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Unmute, Bhaskar.
I heard him say I do. All right. Please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Sure thing. Name is Bhaskar Halari, last name Halari, a professional engineer, Concept Engineering, Manalapan, New Jersey.
Thank you.
We're familiar with Mr. Hilary. We accept his credentials.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Bhaskar, you can share your screen to bring up your plan.
Sorry, Veena probably will put the plan up, I think.
Or Ms. C.
Natalie.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can.
Sure.
While they're putting the map up, I can just briefly start the discussion. As Peter pointed out, this is an application to provide some additional parking to the church facility located on White Oak Lane. The property is, as Peter said, is fortunately there is an upland piece of property in a large 27-acre of wetland area. There is a couple acres of usable upland right behind the church facility. So the church is right now looking to provide additional parking on this property. The church currently have about 106 parking spaces on the existing site. What we are doing is adding another 110 parking spaces right behind it. It will be connected by a single driveway access in the back of the existing building. The site will still use the same ingress and egress from the site. As you can see on this plan, on the southwesterly portion of the parking lot, we have a small stormwater infiltration basin. The whole parking lot is designed to drain towards that basin, and we will have a curb cut which allow that runoff to go into our infiltration basin, and that will discharge the runoff on the northerly side of that proposed basin. We have some parking lot lighting to meet the requirement of the township from the lighting perspective. And we do have provided a landscaping in an area where the proposed infiltration basin is, and also in an area where we interconnecting to an existing site. The portion to the north and to the south of this parking lot itself, is completely wooded and have a significant amount of buffering all around. So we didn't feel any need to provide additional perimeter landscaping in this area. That's pretty much the application. As Peter pointed out, the church has about normal attendance, about 750 people, which according to the township ordinance will require about 250 parking spots. Combine this expansion and existing parking on a site, we will have about 216 parking spaces, which will be still a little short of what's required. But church currently have some agreement with the neighboring properties around the area where they do provide some off-site overflow parking. So our idea is to provide this new parking lot in combination with other agreements they have. They should be able to eliminate most of the on-street parking that occurs on a White Oaks Lane. As far as the church hours of operation, it's open on Sunday morning from 8:30 to 10:30. There is some activity on a Saturday evening and a Wednesday evening, and obviously some occasional various holidays, there would be extended hours of service. Besides that, this is a very straightforward application, Chairman. Really, there is an existing parking issue for the church. And here, the applicants saw an opportunity to alleviate the issue, and we basically are here to do that.
Bhaskar, if I could, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions sort of out of the report. I know you have some notes there with regard to the environmental report and then the report that's from Vina and Nicole's offices. But let me just jump to, Mr. Chairman, that what I know is very important to this board. We received Tom Hart's report to Fire Marshal with regard to installing a hydrant in the rear of the property. And so I went over, and I think Mr. Hart is with us this evening. So I would, welcome to join and tell me if I'm accurate. I went and sat with Tom to look at the site and what we could do. Running pipe and stuff all the way back there to put a hydrant is a lot for putting in a parking lot. But if it's, what Tom really needed, then we'd have to figure out a way to do it. But it turns out Mr. Hart's main concern, it appeared to me, was the ability to pull hose across the driveway entrance onto White Oak Lane to get back to the fire department connection, and then that would cause a problem where trucks couldn't get in and out or people couldn't get out. So when we looked at it, we saw that there might be some other options there, which might be either, Bhaskar, if you could, well, you don't have control of the plan. On the rear of the property, Mr. Chair, pretty much right in line, and board members, with the entrance into the new parking lot is the current fire department connection. So one of the things Tom and I talked about was maybe moving the fire department connection to the front of the building. That way the hose could be brought without blocking the entrance. The hydrant is right out by the, you can see it on the plan slightly. It's right out on White Oak Lane. Or creating access to the neighboring property for emergency vehicles to be able to get out their driveway. So we just got the report worked out with Tom, and I'm really comfortable that we can figure out a way to make sure that he has access to the back there, either by putting the fire department connection up front, or if we can work out something with our neighbor where we could create an access easement to be able to get through there. I don't know if now's the time, I don't know if Mr. Hart wants to comment about whether or not I've stated that accurately.
I would be happy to hear from him if that's okay with you, Mr.
Yeah, I just where we are in time. I know this is really important to the board, so I just wanted to get that out while I have Bhaskar up here.
May free him up for the evening as well. Mr. Fire Marshal Hart.
Jim, yeah, I mean, I understand the building's probably been there since the early 80s, probably before the Bureau of Fire Prevention's even existed. The design for the hydrants on White Oak Lane is that every entrance of that bridge is where the hydrants are for all the buildings. The concern, and in my memo, was that if we had to stretch back there, no other truck could get in over the 5-inch hose. I realize it's a big number to get a hydrant back there, almost 600-700 feet. It's pretty far away from the fire department connection. Back then in the 80s, nobody really worried about that. So looking at it, because the Calvary Chapel utilizes 127 White Oak, which is right north of that site. They, I believe, still rent that space, that if the landlord opened up the last 3 parking spaces, Jimmy, on the northwest corner, it looks like a dumpster cab in the corner there. If we took those 3 parking spaces out and opened up the little grassed area and trees, we would be able to utilize that, one, for evacuation. If we ever had to evacuate this during a Sunday, now that we're adding 120 extra parking spaces, I wouldn't be able to get them out of there at all. At this point, with that cutout, we would be able to get them into 127's driveway and out beyond us to get out of this site. And again, bring my engines or ladders into the site beyond my hose by coming in the other driveway entrance. I don't know what that does for Vina and that group with Nicole. I understand it's a big challenge. Unfortunately, with hydrants, the new, the international code that we use, I have a right to say I want a hydrant where I want it. I also agree that I think it's a hardship that it would cost probably $50,000 or $60,000 to run a hydrant for me to run back there. And the other 8 buildings on White Oak Lane wouldn't have that luxury. And the only reason why it is because they're putting a lot in the back. But if there's a way, Jim, that we could allow me to steal 3 parking spaces, now is the time. So if they're doing their variance for parking, they add 3 to the list that they need. I just think it would benefit everybody, the church, for any type of an emergency, a gas leak, anything that might cause me to evacuate it. I can evacuate it a lot better with that breakthrough. I know, Larry, we've done other projects on 516 with the old, all the parking lots are connected. So it makes it easier to circulate these buildings, especially on 516. So I agree. I came up with that idea sitting with Peter this afternoon with the plan. Whether that's doable through Nicole and Vina is something different. So I agree it would be the best safe thing to do for us, where the hydrant could stay where it is. I don't think he could get the fire department connection relocated to the front of this building because it's all glass. There's windows, there's doors. There's really no place to put it. They have a brand new coffee area in that front northeast corner, which is where it'd be the ideal place to put it. It might be more of a hassle to get it there. If anybody's been at the Calvary Chapel, the center of that building is the prayer area. The north end is their office space, which is a 2-story side. And the southern end is the grammar school, which is also a 2-story building. So it would be a challenge for them to get it. The code enforcement would make them do new calculations for the sprinkler system, and that becomes just a big problem. So if we could steal 3 parking spaces and they could get it worked out, I think that's a win-win for everybody, Jim.
Tom, you're saying the top, it would be the top of the screen to the left at the edge of the what's delineated as parking area there, right?
Yeah, those last, you see, looks like a square box.
Yep.
Just 3 spots to the right of those. We would be able to use. We would be able to
say, can we show it on the cursor?
Natalie, can we please show it?
Yeah, there you go.
Right there.
Those 3, yeah.
Yeah, those 3 up at the top, right?
Up at the top.
Yep,
if
I see
we
it right there.
eliminated 3 of them, that would give me 27 feet of a driveway. If they're 9 by 18 spots, which probably they are. Because along that property line, it's just probably a 6 or 7 foot of grass and some shrubs that separate the 2 lots. Because when we do inspections there and we take an engine in, for 127 White Oak, we go around their parking field, which is nose to nose in the middle of their lot, which is off the picture. and we come alongside of that property line and park there. So there is enough room for, it doesn't affect either one of the buildings at all.
And it would be for emergency egress of
Well, we can leave it open, Jim, permanently for anything.
No, I understand it would be open.
Wouldn't have to be chained off. It wouldn't have to be that. I would leave it open. They use both buildings. They use 127 right now as like an office annex for themselves.
No, I wasn't suggesting, Tom, I wasn't suggesting that it be chained, but what I meant was that'll be an emergency exit for the vehicles that would be parked in the new parking field that could escape that way, and you could still bring your trucks in and have the FDC, use the FDC in the front.
If the FDC can't be moved to the front, correct, I could still get to the back without causing conflict. Because my trucks could technically come through there then.
Got it.
So that's the request, Mr. Chairman, is if the board were to grant the application is it would be contingent upon me working it out with Tom, because we don't, I checked, Tom, I tried to call you later, but it was too late by the time I figured it out. We don't have ownership control of that neighboring lot. Okay. So I can't guarantee that I can get an easement, and and we'd have to have our sprinkler company tell us whether or not we can move the FDC to the front. So I would just ask, and I'm pretty sure Tom's comfortable with me, that if the board were to act favorably on the application, I'll have to work it out with him. But I think what Tom's bringing up is we're saying we're having 216 parking spots. Maybe we can work something in the resolution that if we can get an access easement there, we understand it would be 213 parking spots because we're going to have to lose those 3. So that we don't have to return to the board for like an amendment to the site plan to lose 3 parking spaces if we could get it done. Because I think it's obviously clearly better for everybody if we could manage to do that. But I have another property owner that, you know, I have to decide whether or not they want to work with me.
It sounds like it would be better, but I understand that. Mr. Sachs?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, can I chime in?
Go
Because
right ahead, Ms. Swan.
Here she comes.
Because actually, after Tom and Peter had spoken, Peter did give me a call, and it was my suggestion that I think the best thing would be to ask for a variance or the shortfall of those, assume that we won't have those 3 parking spaces and seek a variance accordingly. Because if you look at the current situation, the church has a severe shortage of parking, and now with this new parking lot, they are trying to alleviate the parking variance significantly. I don't believe those 3 parking spaces would really significantly impact. In fact, the overall project is going to improve the parking situation on the site. Definitely. So I'm comfortable in saying that, just ask for those 3 additional spaces so that you don't have to come back to the board.
Right. Great. I wanted to get that on the record. I very much appreciate those comments, Vina and Tom. And Tom and I have done this a few times, once or twice. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty comfortable we'll figure out a way to make them happy. And knowing Tom, if we can't figure something out, we'll come back here and ask for help. But I'm quite sure we can.
That sounds great.
We also received Keith Brennan's report today around 10 o'clock. In it, there was a comment about the detention basin and its effect on maybe the suppressed systems in nearby buildings. Bhaskar, if you could just speak a little bit, you had a conversation with him.
Yes.
You could speak how we have that resolved.
Sure. So after getting that comment from Keith, I had a conversation with around 3 o'clock this afternoon, where he thought the basin we are constructing is going to be retention basin. When I explained to him it's an infiltration basin and it's a short duration where the basin will drain out. So he said to do a letter to him explaining what we are doing. And if that is the case, then we don't need to do anything. That was his understanding. So we have worked that out, and I will do the letter to him explaining the stormwater infiltration basin and its functionality.
Simply speaking, there was a concern that Mr. Hart's firemen may want to go and draft from that pond, which may end up polluting the domestic water supply by going into the sprinkler system. But that's a pond that it's not a pond. So it wouldn't be drafted from, I don't even think they have an interest in doing that. So we have that cleared up with a letter to what will be a letter to Mr. Brennan. So I don't think we have an issue with that. So we've got that one out of the way. Looking at the environmental resolutions report with me, Bhaskar, there was a question about whether we'll have cross-access easements. Yes, the properties will remain in separate ownership, but we'll be able to put overlapping easements on them so that they can be sort of treated as one.
Correct.
We can provide, there was a request to provide wheel stops where you have the cutout curb. We can do that.
Yes, we can do
Is it
that.
easier, Bhaskar, for me, because we're under a little bit of time, is it easier rather than, I know you have some notes. Do you want to just go through sort of your responses to the highlighted comments?
Yeah, sure. So basically, from engineer's comment, we agree that we will provide going through the information, we'll provide the notes that they are required about anything higher than a 4 feet high retaining wall that will be designed by an engineer. We have an LOI from DEP, which will require some buffer averaging, which we'll provide. And we will revise the handicap stall. There is a 2 parking stall that are shown up as an handicap on the plan. We just have to remove that striping. We will provide the handicap route. We'll modify the parking stall appropriately. We do require a waiver for parking stall size, where 10 by 20 is required. We have 9 by 18, but we do provide a wider aisle. Instead of 24, we have a 25 feet. So you still have a better maneuver movement through that parking lot. I don't know of any other specific comment that we needed to really review.
There was some additional information that was requested with regard to stormwater management. We know that Mr. Blank is interested in that from the first application. So you're going to provide that additional information?
Yes, yes. We have reviewed through all the stormwater management comments, and we will provide all necessary information to the engineer to his satisfaction.
And with this application, we did submit a stormwater management report and an aquifer recharge report.
Yes, we did. We did.
Okay. So there's additional
comments are just more of a clarification and some more detail in the design we did. But in general, the design we propose here meets all the stormwater rules requirement. There was some additional calculation that they needed.
Any of the other technical comments that were raised in either of the reports, you have no issue with complying with those comments?
Correct. We no issue complying with those comments.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I have nothing further of Mr. Bhaskar. He's available to the board and the board's professionals to answer any questions.
Let's go to Mr. Blank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bhaskar, have you submitted for the additional wetlands permits yet at this point in time?
No, we have not. But the permits that we are asking for this project are very, very common permits that we get on numerous of projects all the time. So we don't see any issue in obtaining those permits. Most important thing is an LOI, so we know the extent of wetland and what buffer we're dealing with. And we have all that determined, so we feel very comfortable with this plan. Okay. But we're waiting for obtaining the township approval before we spend more funds to go for an approval. In case we have to change some designs, we have to go back again and get another approval. So.
With regard to handicap parking, I drove through the site and I noticed there's a lot of extra handicap parking signs scattered throughout. And I know that you're reconfiguring some of the existing stalls to provide appropriate handicap parking stall striping and aisles, but will the existing handicap signage that's at spaces that are not delineated as handicap parking be removed?
Yes, actually, that currently what they have is not according to any design standard. I guess it's like conventional parking spaces, and they have just installed the sign as a handicap parking. It's mostly located in the front of the building, and that is what I'm saying, that we are proposing complete redelineation of ADA parking stalls in the front, which is more organized and structured. And there is 2 parking spaces that are far to the right side of that proposed handicap parking, which there is still old signs that are there that we need to take it out. So we will be removing all other signage that is out there except for where we are proposing the parking spaces.
Right. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Sawant?
I don't have any further questions. Lighting, I believe Jonathan had some comments in his review letter, and so did I. I just want to inform the board, we do not have a letter from our forester. He's away. So I would suggest that should the board act favorably on this application, the board make that as a condition of approval, that the forester reviews this application prior to final compliance plans. Landscaping, I agree with Bhaskar's testimony and Peter's comments that the parking lot is surrounded by wetlands, so it has a natural buffer around it. And although there are a lot of waivers required, those are actually technical in nature. The only one place I would ask for clarification is the lot line, the common lot line between the two lots. I need confirmation that there is a 5-foot buffer. And if there is a 5-foot buffer, I would suggest that you add some shrubbery, some landscaping there,
Sure.
because that is technically your buffer area. So that is something I would expect to see in the revised plans. But other than that, I do not have additional comments. I do have some comments on the use variance were included in my report already, but that's all from me for the engineer.
Thank you. Mr. Meltzer? You have anything?
Sorry, I just was trying to unmute very quickly. Apologize.
No problem.
Just one comment and one quick question. Comment, I think if they can obtain the cross access and eliminate those parking spaces, the interconnectivity is definitely a win, and I hope that all works out just from a circulation standpoint. And one curiosity question. Obviously, this will go a long way to alleviate the parking situation. With this, is it still, I know there's been observations of parking out on White Oak Lane. Is this parking lot anticipated really to eliminate the need for your parishioners to park out on White Oak Lane?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Bhaskar. Go ahead.
No, sir. That is our expectation at this point, given that if there is a 750 attendee and we need 250 parking spaces, this combined two site will give us about 213. Let's say we lose 3 for the cross access. On top of that, they have a neighboring property to the north, plus also they have another site to the south where they have an agreement for overflow parking. So except for high holidays, maybe where there may be more attendees, we may have some parking, but besides that, our idea is to incorporate everything within these 3-4 properties that they have agreements with.
Yeah, I was looking, obviously high holidays for any religious facility are challenging. So it was more for the average Sunday. Okay, great.
The goal is to alleviate that, but we can't. I'm not in a position where I can agree to a condition that we would prohibit it. But I think that's the goal here, is to try and get rid of that as much as possible. Which is what
I wasn't asking for that, Peter. Yeah, I just was asking for a general question.
I'm the annoying lawyer that just has to be clear. That's all. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. That's okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Sachs, we can get that done, and that even though the forester's not here, the conservation officer, we could make sure that that's covered.
Yes, we can make that, if the board acts favorably, we can make that a condition of approval, that obviously they'll have to review that and subject to their approval.
And if I could point out too, we would agree, but that was part of the technical comments to meet lighting to the satisfaction of the township professionals. And we did submit the plan for Mr. Lavallo to review. As you might recall, this was actually on your last meeting for a waiver request for that plan, and it got taken off because we submitted it. So we're part of the way there.
Okay.
Good.
Anything else you have for?
No, I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Board members, I can't see you, but I'm sure somebody has a question. Thank you. Any board members have any questions for Mr. Hilary? I don't see anybody. Okay, Peter, go ahead.
Okay, our next witness is Jay Troutman. Just to put something on the record, that there was a bit of an analysis done and talk about parking and numbers. So if I could, is Jay here?
I'm here.
There we go. So if I could, I would ask that Mr. Troutman be sworn. And you see where we're at in the evening, Jay, and it seems like the board has a really good handle on what we're doing here. If you could just share with them a little. Well, first, if you could be sworn. Sorry, Larry.
Okay, no problem. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the background, for the record.
Yes, Jay Troutman, principal with the firm of McDonough and Ray Associates.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I believe the board may be familiar with Mr. Troutman, or if you'd like, I could have him take you
He's
through
testifying as a traffic engineer, right?
Traffic engineer, yes.
Fine. We'll accept it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you prepared a report and submitted it to the board. Perhaps you could summarize your study and your findings.
Yes, basically, we wanted to just get a handle on a lot of things that have already been discussed, that existing parking activity out on White Oak Lane. So we went out and took some of our own observations. And basically, the way the numbers come out, you're seeing on a Sunday, close to 100 church vehicles maybe out on White Oak Lane. So with a parking lot of 110 spaces on an average Sunday, we're looking at a situation where we could remove a majority, if not all, those vehicles off the street. And that is a significant positive impact on pedestrian safety when you get those pedestrians out of the roadway and off the street and into the property. And that's really, from a traffic safety standpoint, the reason certain relief is being requested. And we think it's justified, based on this safety improvement. And that's really the long and the short of it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one question, Jay. That's outside. You've looked at the way that Boscar's laid out the new parking on the inside, the slightly larger drive aisle, comfortable with that the interior circulation is safe and would operate and function.
Yes, it is. It's just an extension of what the parishioners are used to doing now, and now they're going to have another option as they go around the back. They can go in and fill in that parking lot.
Great. Mr. Chair, that's it. I don't have any more questions with Mr. Troutman. He's available for the board and their professionals for questions.
I'm going to ask, where's Fina?
I have no further comments.
Mr. Blank?
I have no further comments as well.
Mr. Metzler?
No further comments. Thank you.
Mr. Sachs?
Mr. Chairman, no further comments.
Okay. I just had one question, Peter, when we were talking about getting a LOI, you're in the uplands, but if the LOI is not going to, it can't be so bad that it's going to cut your parking down, will it?
We have the LOI.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, what we don't have is a transition area waiver, because an engineer like Boscar had touched, I think he alluded to it earlier. When you have the LOI, Boscar knows how to do the transition area, and it's going to get approved by the DEP. So that's why the LOI is important. So yeah, we think we're good where we are.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Board members, any further questions of this witness? Please raise your hand. I see none. You want to move forward, Peter?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Jim's ready. So if I could, I'd have him sworn, and I'm gonna get out of his way.
Mr. Higgins, let me see if I can find you here.
Bottom.
There you are. Okay.
Yep, okay.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
James Higgins, Higgins. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state. I've been licensed for about 45 years.
I believe everyone here knows Mr. Higgins, and we accept his expertise. We have in the past. No
Jim,
sense
you
in
think it's a
stopping
good
now.
idea? Jim, you think it's a good idea to add some more parking to the site? You think you could take the board
Yeah,
through that
I
a bit?
think this might be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I will
all
make
right.
this as brief as possible, given the hour. As you've heard, there's a substantial problem with cars parking on White Oak Lane during church services, up to 100, maybe a little bit more than 100 cars. And this application is going to provide additional parking for over 100 cars, which is going to substantially alleviate, if not totally alleviate, that problem during normal hours of operation of the church. This piece of property, and the test is whether the general welfare is advanced due to the particular suitability of the site for the use. In this instance, this piece of uplands can only be accessed through the church site. There's no access to this through any other site surrounding it. It's an isolated area of uplands, and it's not only particularly suited, it's uniquely suited for the use that the applicant wants to put it to. While it's an R120 zone, it is completely isolated from residences that surround this, that are adjacent to the site. It can't be readily viewed from other properties other than the church site. And quite frankly, the general welfare is advanced due to the particular suitability of the site. There is no substantial impact on your ordinance because this area cannot be used for what it's zoned for, which is single-family residential houses, because they could only be accessed through the church site. And there is no substantial detriment because of the isolation of this area by heavy wood lands. So I think there are substantial positive reasons for the granting of the variance, and I don't see any substantial negative impact.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Ms. Sawant?
I have no questions for Mr. Higgins. I think this is one of the rare occasions where I have said it very clearly in my memo that this is the only or this is the optimal use of the upland area on the property. You have no access, rather any access to the upland areas from 516 would be very difficult because you would have to go through extensive permitting process. So it is a great use for the property. I have no further questions. I just want to let the board know, because I missed it in the first part. Actually, the applicant met Nicole and me and Damien twice, and we brainstormed and discussed the project at 2 instances. The first time, I believe, Peter, it was in January of 2020, and then the second time was January of 2021. So here we are. I think it's a great project, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Suffice to say then, from your professional opinion, this can be done. And to use the quote that Mr. Higgins said, it's uniquely suited.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Oh, I already asked. No, I didn't go to you guys. Mr. Blank, I asked you yet. Any questions?
I do not have any further questions for Mr. Higgins.
All right, Mr. Metzler.
None from Mr. Higgins. Thank you.
Mr. Sachs.
No, none for me, and good to see you, Jim.
Nice seeing you.
Okay, now I'll go to board members. Any questions of Mr. Higgins? I think we're all familiar with him. He gave us a Cliff Note version there, but I don't think there's a lot more to say, to be truthful. Any questions? Okay, I see no hands raised. Back to you, Mr. Clauser.
I have no more direct presentation. I would ask, Mr. Chairman, if you're comfortable at this point, to open it up to the public, and then maybe we can move on to a motion.
Why don't we do that? Okay, if you could put up the phone numbers that are going to appear before you is for the public portion. This is matter number 34-2021Z, located at 123 White Oak Lane. It's for a proposed church parking lot. If you have any questions or concerns on this matter and you wish to be heard, please dial one of those phone numbers now so the board can listen to your commentary. Ms. C, is there anyone in queue?
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, we'll give it a minute. Once again, this is the Calvary Church on White Oak Lane, proposing to put in a parking lot of, I believe, 100, what did I write down? 110 added spots to try to alleviate, one to accommodate the parishioners, and two to alleviate the parking on White Oak Lane, which if anybody has gone by there on weekends, you know what that's like. Any call in yet?
No.
Mr. Sachs?
And Mr. Chairman, I think we can close the public portion.
All right, we will close the public portion on this matter. Mr. Clauser?
So I want to start by saying thank you. I know that you have normal time limitations, but I think you recognize the importance of the application. So I appreciate all the board members and Mr. Chair, you allowing us to hang around. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time anymore. This makes sense. And unless there's any other questions, I would just ask that you act favorably on the application.
Right. This is a we require a D1, right, Vina, on this? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Board members, it's a use variance because of the fact that it's on the different lot, right? So it's not an accessory.
So can I explain, Jim?
Would you please?
Yes, the lot is, it's a split zone property. What that means is a portion of the property that touches 516 is in the commercial zone, whereas the rear side of the property is in the R120 zone. The proposed parking lot lies within the residential R120 zone. And although the parking lot is an accessory use to the church use, when you review it on the individual parcels, there's no lot consolidation here. So since they're two separate lots, the lot is in the R120 zone, the parking lot on a residential zone or within a residential zone as a principal use requires a D1 use variance.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone on the board understands that. Board members, and before I get any further instructions on the vote, does anybody have any questions or concerns on this matter that Mr. Dewhurst?
Just one question. I know there's a series of waivers also.
Yes.
We're not gonna list them all, right?
No, but we're going to talk. We're going to get a recap.
Okay.
All right, but yeah, we won't do that blindly.
Yeah. That's my only question.
Anybody on the board have any problems that we can't work out here? Now, Mr. Clauser, there was an agreement, I think, that what Mr. Hilary had said, and Mr. Higgins didn't have to, but that there would be, you would work with Mr. Hart as well to make sure that we can make this all happen, correct?
I got to get his blessing. Yeah, I'm comfortable saying that. Okay, I'll figure out a way to do it.
That's good with you, Tom?
Yes, it is, Jim.
Great, thank you. Mr. Blank, I see your hand. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just looking through the traffic memo one more time, and there's a comment, item 6, about there's 2 parking spaces located closest to the corner in the northernmost section of the parking lot, which will be difficult to access because it's kind of angled with each other. And the recommendation was that one of the parking spaces in the corner should be removed to eliminate the conflict. I just wanted to ask Bhaskar if you've looked into that. Will one of those be removed?
No, I looked into that. Originally, when we designed it, there was one more parking spot right next to it, which we eliminated because we felt it is going to create a conflict. Now, what I think we have both vehicles to go in and out, we will give them a turning template so they can see that it both can be used. And if engineer is satisfied, then we're okay. But if he's still not satisfied, we have to remove one, we will remove one. But I think it's definitely workable what we have there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Sachs, obviously we have the D1 that has to succeed or anything else. That would be for the use.
That'll be for the use.
Then we would have various waivers, correct?
Well, we have, yeah, I mean, I think we also have technically, I think we have a parking variance. So I think we should. Yeah. Well, no, the number. I mean, it's a pre-existing non-conformity, but I think because of the fire hydrant, we're going to take away 3 additional spaces, right?
Right, and they're going 9 by 18 versus 10 by 20.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's, those are waivers.
Right.
So those would be waivers, all right? All right, so we'll do a D1, a C in the design waivers. I'll just briefly list those waivers. That would be for parking stall size, width and depth. There's a number of waivers for landscaping, and minimum curb, return radii, parking facilities not closer than 5 feet from the side yard, and landscape islands.
Okay.
Larry, I think Bhaskar testified that there is 5 feet between
Okay.
the lot line and the parking lot.
Okay,
and
so we can
hence
eliminate
the-
that one.
Yes, so the parking facilities one, the second last waiver does not.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that one out. Okay, that's fine. Okay,
You remove that one and you've already enumerated all the others, correct?
yes.
Okay. Board members, this is a D1 use for that, for the parking lot. Someone in favor of moving this?
I'll move it. Dewhurst.
Okay, I think Mr. Dewhurst moved it, and Scogno I heard as a second. Roll
Correct.
call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Then we have the C, correct, Larry?
Let's do the C and the design waivers together. That's fine.
All right, C in the design waivers. Is someone in favor of moving them?
Motion to approve, Connor?
All right, Mr. Connor, is there a second?
Second, Kilduff.
Moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. And major
And then we have-
preliminary?
Yeah, let's do preliminary and then final.
Okay, preliminary site plan. I'll move it. Is there a second?
Second, Psychowski.
Moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, and then major final site plan. I'll move that as well. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dewhurst seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes, please.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes, and you didn't ask me about the last one that they just.
Yes,
passed.
I just noticed. Thank you.
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. That should wrap it up.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Clauser, thank you and all your professionals for the testimony this evening, and thanks for hanging in there.
And thank you for letting us go tonight. That's wonderful. It's very good for the applicant when you guys squeeze us in. We don't have to bring everybody back. It's much appreciated. So
We appreciate you being direct and to the point.
good. Have a good night.
Happy Thanksgiving to all in case we won't be meeting again. So be safe and
That's
thank everybody for being here tonight. We have one other order of business, and that's the 2022 zoning board schedule, board members. There was a discussion at the last meeting and to remove 2 dates. And you should have received the new schedule, having one meeting in March 3rd. And I think the other correction was in September. There would only be one. It would be September 1st. The September 15th was taken out. Anybody have any problems with this new schedule? It sounds like my screaming parrot has a problem with it, but hearing no comments on it, does somebody want to move this, the 2022 meeting schedule? Ms. Sawani, do you want to say something?
No, I think we made those changes and.
Yeah. So we can move this and vote on this right now then.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, someone want to move it?
Sounds like Bert already made that motion.
Yeah. Is that you, Mr.? You're gonna move it? I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Board, that concludes our business for the evening. I want to thank everybody for hanging in there the extra time. I think it was successful that we got, at least took care of one of the two applications for this evening. I wish each and every one of you a very safe and happy holidays approaching. We meet again, I believe, December 2nd, right?
Second, yes.
All right. Larry, anything from you on the legal end?
Yeah, we did, I think I mentioned I was going to have that trial on Metro Storage, and that did occur. I think it was middle of October. It was a rather spirited hearing. But I don't expect the judge to issue an opinion very quickly. He kind of told us that, so I'm sure he's going to deliberate.
Okay.
And it was rather unusual that I was actually arguing along with Mr. Gazarovski, since he was my co-counsel, so to speak, on that. So it was interesting. But anyway, as soon as I get that decision, I'll report it back to the board.
All right, thank you very much. Vina, we don't know when the when the offices are going to open. I mean, the courtroom, I should say. Isn't they making progress?
The courtroom is open. The council has been conducting their meetings in the courtroom. It's just that because it's flu season and we have volunteers working on both boards, we just thought that we would wait until next year to start conducting meetings in person. So I'm going to reevaluate it with the administration and then take a call on it.
Very good. I think we'll all go. We have no problem staying with the Zoom meetings, at least until next year. Get us through the holidays.
You know, I think even with the residents, I heard that many residents prefer the Zoom meeting because it's easy to log in, not just in Old Bridge. I've not heard anything in Old Bridge, but the common consensus among different boards and different municipalities are that the residents also prefer the Zoom meeting so that it's easy for them to join in when they have a matter they're interested in. But I'm sure, Larry, do we have any guidance from DCA? I haven't heard of anything yet.
No. It's really status quo. I mean, the courts are still closed. You can't go into a courthouse in New Jersey. So, the only thing that's being conducted in the courthouses now are virtual hearings, motion hearings, some eviction complaints, some eviction hearings, some criminal hearings. I mean, civil cases are pretty much on hold because they're not letting juries into the courthouse. So I don't know when that's going to open up. So we'll keep going with this procedure. Some towns do have live meetings. I mean, East Brunswick has live meetings for their planning and zoning board. Queensburg has live meetings, but very few. Edison has some live meetings, but most towns are still virtual. So,
all right. Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Any board members, anything to say?
It sounds like your bird's getting his 15 minutes of fame this way anyway.
He wants to go to bed, is what he wants.
So do I.
So do I. I have to get up early. And once again, everybody, thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging in there tonight, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We need to make a motion for an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn, right?
Motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bye.
We stand adjourned.